Hello friends, today your friend Juggler is going to telling you about, what if Naruto become the second Juubi, part 4. Check the creator from link given in the description, and if you enjoy this video then please like, share and subscribe my channel. Let's start the story. Each match will be 2-on-2 except for one which will be a 3-way. Now will everyone except Inuzuka and Ujito Nii leave the floor and go up to the balcony? Hayate Gecko said as he called out the first battle. Everyone left the lower floor, leaving only the two girls who were about to fight. This isn't good. Ujito is older and more experienced than Inuko-chan. Plus Ujito has the Nibi in her, so that gives her a massive boost in battle in both chakra and stamina. Naruto thought to himself as he watched the two girls who were staring off at the moment. I hope you don't get to hurt Inuko-chan. Naruto thought sadly. He wanted her to win, but he had fought Ujito during the war and she had been a pain with her long nails and fire jutsu. Ujito sniffed the air, then pinched her nose. You smell horrible, just like a dog. Ujito taunted her opponent, who growled back at her, showing her more wild side. And you smell like old tuna, cat. Inuko said back as she and Akamaru ready to fight the Nibi Jinchuriki. Ready? Hayate asked the two, who nodded their response. Fight, he said as he jumped out of way. Ujito was quick to act and charged at Inuko with her nails extended. Take this, she said as he tried to cut Inuko, but the Inuzuka heiress was able to jump out of the way of the attack. Inuko smirked confidently. Is that all you have? Let's go, Akamaru. Gatsuga, she called out as both her and Akamaru stared, spinning rapidly, and charged at Ujito, who jumped out of the way with a backflip. Both Inuko and Akamaru stopped their attack before they could crash into the floor. You're too slow. Katon Hanko Ujito called out as she exhaled a large cloud of ash which took the shape of 10 small cats with glowing red eyes. The 10 ash cats ran towards Inuko, who was still smirking confidently. Is that all? Tsuga, Inuko yelled as she tunneled towards the cats at a fast speed. No, Inuko-chan. Turn away. Naruto yelled at his girlfriend, who didn't hear him in time and collided with ash cats. Each one of the cats exploded in ash and were drawn into the Tsuga. Inuko's attack went wild before she crashed into the ground, screaming in pain as the burning hot ash burned her skin on contact back. Because of her spin, her entire body was completely surrounded in the ash. Inuko's screams could be heard piercing the ash cloud from within. Naruto acted quickly and jumped into the cloud and quickly absorbed the ash using the Preta path. Thankfully, since Ujito was a Jinchuriki, he could absorb the jutsu without any drawbacks. Everyone's eyes widened when the cloud was completely absorbed into Naruto's body. He can absorb jutsu. Killer Bee and Darui thought in shock that someone possessed such a skill. They knew that they needed to report this to A. quickly. Someone with such a power couldn't be let go without them knowing about it. The match is over, Naruto said in a stern voice as he looked down at Inuko's unconscious body. Her clothes had been nearly burnt off and her skin was covered in bright pink burns from the ash. He was thankful that Ujito was a Jinchuriki, since that meant that he chakra had traces of Biju chakra which he could absorb. If it weren't for that, he would have had a lot more of a problem, since he wasn't completely used to draining non-Biju chakra. Hiruzen nodded as motioned for Hayate to end the match. The special Jonin nodded as well. Winner, Ujito Nii of Kumo. Medics, the Konoha native called as two men in medical outfits came out carrying a stretcher. Naruto created a seal-less shadow clone and sent it with the medics to watch over Inuko. Naruto walked back up to the upper floor, but as he passed the Kumo teams he stopped for a second. The little cat did well, but she is obviously above Genin level. I mean, with her current age and the Nibi, she should be at least a Jonin. Wouldn't you say so, Haki-chan? Naruto said with a small smirk to Killer Bee, who now had wide eyes hidden behind his goggles. Which one? Bee asked the blonde. None. Naruto said mysteriously as he walked away. He still wanted to keep his role as Juubi a secret, but intimidating others was fun at times. He must have gained that trait after absorbing the Bijus during the war. But that has nothing to do with my question. I repeat, why is a Jonin level kunoichi in an exam made for genin? Naruto asked with narrowed eyes. It was an order from the Sandaime Raikage before his death. Darui said to the blonde, who nodded before walking away back to his team. Darui turned to B. Did the Hakubi say anything about him? The Raikage's right-hand man asked. Only that he was very powerful. We should be careful. Killer B rapped badly, causing every Kyumo ninja around him to sweat drop. Do you hear that? Umwa asked his teammates nervously. What if he's really a massive monster made up of all 9 Bijus fused into one? The blonde Kyumo shinobi said as he thought about the absolute worst outcome, which so happened to be correct. Karui grew a tick mark and hit her fellow Kyumo shinobi over the head. Idiot, how would that be possible? Ujitone has the Nibi and B-sensei had the Hakubi. Karui yelled at her teammate who was rubbing the bump on his head. Samui was looking at Naruto with a slight blush. He's cool, she thought to herself as she looked back up at the electronic board to see who would be battling next. Tenten v Tamari. The two girls walked down to the lower floor and prepared to fight. The fight, however, had been harsh for Tenten since she got the worst opponent for her sins. All her weapons which she threw down at Tamari were blown away by the wind user's attacks. No matter what trick she tried to use against the Suna Kunoichi, they all failed. The battle would have ended with a brutal hit to Tenten's spine if it weren't for Guy stepping in time. Well, that was less than entertaining. Naruto said with a large frown as he was forced to re-watch the battle that had happened all those years ago in his home dimension, but he was happy that this time Guy was able to stop. Kazumi nodded slowly. She still didn't know what to think of Naruto yet, since he was easily over Jonin level if what he had shown back on Genin test and the wave mission proved. She didn't know whether to be cautious of him or feel admiration for the blonde, but she could help but feel a small jump in her heartbeat when he looked at her in the eyes. It was as if he understood her pain. Her pain of losing so many close to you, yet he was able to show his face to the world while she kept it hidden since the death of her father at his own hands. By order of the Hokage, the next battle, will be between Naruto Namikaze of Konoha and C of Kyumo, as well as Akihiko of Kyumo, in a 2-on-1 battle. Hayate announced, much to the surprise of everyone there, since they didn't that the Hokage would make his own shinobi fight against 2 others from a different village. Well, everyone but Naruto, who was excited about being able to fight. Naruto smirked at this. Of course the old man would make him have a 2-on-1 battle, but he was the goddamn Juubi and there was no way he was going to lose to 2 genin. Good, Naruto said as he jumped over the rail and landed on the lower floor. Who do you think will win? Yujito asked her fellow Kyumo shinobi, who watched as her 2 teammates walked down to the battle floor. Is that a rhetorical question? Karui asked with a raised eyebrow as she looked at her friend. Of course C and Akihiko are going to win the battle. For one, think it's 2-on-1 and 2, we're Kyumo shinobi, and if what we saw from your battle they aren't that strong. Karui said arrogantly, getting glares from every Konoha ninja for insulting them. The Konoha kid will win, you can see it in his grin. Killer B rapped his thoughts to his students. I agree with B-sensei. I believe that he will win this battle. Samui said coldly as she looked at the lower floor where all 3 fighters were getting ready to battle. What? How can you say that, Samui? Where is your pride? Karui yelled at the busted Kunoichi, who looked at her from the corner of her eyes. I am simply stating what I believe will happen. Your reacting was so no cool. Samui said coldly as the proctor stepped forward. Naruto vs and Akihiko ready? Hayate asked to the 2 sides, who nodded. Fight, he said as he jumped back. For a while no one made a single movement as the 2 sides studied each other. This moment was broken by Naruto, who smirked and slammed his palm on the ground, causing a large plume of smoke to erupt outward. Jakaru Hanto. Naruto yelled from within the smoke cloud as 4 black and gold blurs shot out from the cloud. Two went for each Kyumo shinobi who tensed as they motioned to dodge but were unable to do so before two jackals bit down on each other's shoulders. Ah! Both screamed in pain as the sharp teeth of the canines dug deep into their flesh. Naruto smirked lightly as he vanished in a blur of speed. With each passing second several new cuts appeared on either C or Akihiko before Naruto reappeared in front of them. The four jackals vanished in plumes of smoke as Naruto turned back to the two genin. "Is that all you have?" Naruto asked in a bored tone which enraged Akihiko and made C stand on edge. Both their bodies were losing blood fast and the cuts and teeth wounds were burning like no tomorrow. "Dai Konoha scum!" Akihiko screamed out in outrage as he preformed hand signs at a speed which the other Konoha genin except Naruto and his team could keep track of. "Right in false darkness." He yelled out his jutsu before firing a spear of lightning shot out towards Naruto, who vanished and reappeared behind him with his hand on Akihiko's head. Naruto could feel all the sins the genin had preformed from the beginning of his career. He could forgive killing to protect your village, but this boy had killed people just because they refused to serve him a free meal. He had raped young girls all over Kaminari no Kuni and a few other countries while on missions. He had robbed from people who had done nothing wrong. He was utterly despicable. "I believe it is you who shall die," Naruto said in a dark tone. This was the kind of person who held the world back from peace, and he would make sure that he would never do anything to bring darkness to the world. "Human path," Naruto said silently as he ripped out Akihiko's soul. Now, while normally he would absorb the soul and learn everything that the boy had learned over the years, he didn't want the memories of all the crimes the Kyumo ninja had committed to be imprinted onto his mind, so he did the next best thing and destroyed the soul into small blue glowing particles that faded into nothingness. Everyone stood silent as Akihiko's body slumped lifelessly forward onto the floor. None could believe what the blonde had just done. They all looked down at Naruto with a hint of fear, with the exception of Team And, who had seen him do it before. "Kitten, you have to make sure that you never anger this man. I was unsure of it before, but I know now that he just used the power of one of the 6 paths." The Nibi warned to her container about how dangerous Naruto was. Then Yujito started to hear perverted giggles in her head, but it would never hurt trying to nab him for yourself. "That's it, kitten, from now on your mission is to get into his pants and give me a litter of kittens," the two-tailed Baijuya proclaimed from within Yujito, causing her to blush. "Nibi. I don't even know the guy and he just killed off one of my teammates. Why would I even think about going out with him?" Yujito screamed back mentally at her tenant, who just giggled as she cut off the connection. "Stupid perverted cat." Yujito sighed manadly while this was going on. B and the Hakusabi were having their own conversation. "B, I suggest that you try to befriend that blonde and gain him as an ally. What he used was called the human path. It is one of the 6 paths that the Rikudo Sennin could use, and when there is one path, the other 5 are sure to be as well. This body may very well be the reincarnation of the sage for all we know. I also sense the power of the Baijuya within him, but it feels like all 9 mixed into one with some additional foreign chakra mixed in. I fear this boy man may be the next Juubi no Kishin." The 8th Tails warned his container. For once B was lost for word. He had just been told that this genin could be the next sage of 6 path as well as the next 10 tails. This was way too much to even comprehend at the moment. He would have to tell his brother this in secret. Gaia, on the other hand, was holding her head as Shikaku jumped around in her head, screaming about how her father had returned to it at last and how she should take his blood for it. "Father's back. Father's back. Father has finally come back. And mother wants his blood. Gaia, I want his blood for me so that I will never be without him again. Do it. Do it now." The Ichibai screamed psychotically out to its container, who was trying to hold back the wave of bloodlust that the Biju was giving off. Eventually the pressure stopped, as Shikaku got tired and retreated back into the depths of her mind. What did mother mean when she called this man father? Gaia thought to herself as she held her head in pain, which got her worried looks from her team. Back at the battle, C had quickly used a healing jutsu to fix himself back into battling condition and threw a dozen shuriken at Naruto. The blonde Juubi didn't even bother dodging and used his Azura path to harden his skin into metal. To everyone it seemed as if C had finally gotten a hit on Naruto, but Kazumi had heard about his battle with Haku and how her senbon bounced off of his armored skin, so she wasn't too worried. Her prediction came true when the shuriken fell onto the ground without a speck of blood on them. The blonde-haired Kumo shinobi smirked and pulled out a kunai with an explosive tag attached and threw it at the one-armed demon. Naruto smirked as he blurred out of existence and reappeared high over C. It's over, C, I win. Jinten Sonic Downfall. Naruto showed it as he became a blur as he shot down at C and heel dropped his head into the ground, but Naruto restrained himself as to not cripple or kill C, since unlike the other Kumo shinobi, he had committed any crimes against humanity. The attack kicked up a ton of dust which formed into a brownish-colored cloud around the two remaining fighters. Everyone waited with bated breath as the dust cloud started to thin out to the point where they could see the silhouette of a male standing over another male. It was clear to everyone that Naruto had won the match hands down. He had been able to kill one of his opponents by removing the soul and then followed by knocking out C. The next match will be, the proctor said as he looked up at the board. Ino Yamanaka vs Karui of Kumo, Hayate said before he stared to cough once again. Naruto really felt bad for him, but he wasn't a medical professional and didn't have enough control over his power to be sure that his energy wouldn't hurt or kill him. He never did learn how he died. The two kunoichi walked down the steps and met on the ground. Karui gripped the handle of her sword as she got ready to fight the other genin. Both kunoichi stared at each other as if studying everything they could from the other. Hayate looked at the two before raising his hands. Fight! He yelled as he jumped back as to not get caught in the middle. Karui made the first move and charged at Ino with her sword now completely drawn. Back in the academy, Ino would have been screwed right now because she had never trained and just focused on her looks, but Naruto had told her that he would only go out with her if she actually trained and became a real kunoichi. From that day on she had been training with Naruto every other weekend and with her team during the week. Ino ducked under the slash and preformed a quick genjutsu, making her invisible to anyone without a dojutsu. Karui looked all around for Ino but was completely unable to find her. However, her trained Konosuke instincts told her to jump out of the way. Lucky for Karui, she was right as Ino appeared over the spot she was just in and smashed her fist into the ground, leaving a decent-sized crater for a genin. Sarutobi couldn't help but look at Naruto, who was smirking at Ino's display of strength. So you taught her Tsunade-chan's strength-enhancing technique, Sarutobi thought to himself as he looked down at fight which was getting intense now. Karui kept up her assault on Ino, who used her natural flexibility to dodge every single attack that Karui was launching. No matter how good Karui was with the sword. Stand still, Karui said through gritted teeth. The blonde just wouldn't stand still long enough for Hirto hit her. Why would I do that? I have a love life unlike you, flat chest, and I'm sure my boyfriend wouldn't like it if I was all scared up. Ino said with large smirk as she saw Karui get angrier with each failed swing and the flat chest comment. And bringing up the fact that she was single only helped to make her even more enraged. Shut up, the feisty redhead yelled as she charged lightning chakra through her sword. Ino smirked at how angry Karui had gotten from her teasing. Sorry, flat chest, but I think it's about time to end this, Ino said as she jumped back and preformed the hand signs for her family's trademark technique. Shintenshin no jutsu, she said as he body fell limp on the ground. Karui froze in place as she felt Ino's mind taking over her very body. She tried with all her might to fight back Ino's consciousnesses as shown by her gritting teeth, but in the end she lost control to Ino. Proctor, Karui said as she turned to Hayate while holding a kunai to her throat. I Karui give up, the redhead said. Winner, Ino Yamanaka, Hayate said out to the crowd who clapped at the performance. Ino released the jutsu and went back into her own body. Kurui's eyes widened as she looked around. Seeing Ino on the ground, she thought this was her chance but was stopped by B before she could do anything. "Kurui-chan, stop your assault, it's pointless since you already lost," B said in rap to his genin. "What? How?" Kurui asked frantically. Killer B then had to go on and explain the end of the battle to her as they walked back to where the other Kumo ninjas stood while Ino walked back to her team. "Damn it," she said as tears streaked down her cheeks. She had come so far in these damn exams only to forfeit against her will. "You know you shouldn't cry over spilled milk, right?" Naruto said as he walked over to the group. Unknown to the genin other than Naruto, Killer B tensed when the blonde had walked over to his group once again. Any being who could make the Hakusabi feel uneasy also make him uneasy. The only ones who had done that before were the third Raikage who he respected, his brother A when he had cut of one of his horns, the Kuwabai no Kitsune, Hashirama Senju, and now this boy. Kurui glared at him. "What are you here to brag about how one of your village's ninja defeated another one of ours?" She yelled at the blonde demon who raised his hands up in defense. Naruto shook his head. No, I just came here to tell you that you did good out there," Naruto said honestly to her. Seeing that he wasn't going to make fun of her, she lessened her glare but still had a lesser one. "I must say that you must be quite skilled in Raiten manipulation to be able to use it in conjunction with a blade. But I have to ask, what effect were you going for? Because from what I saw you were using it in a way which would paralyze your opponent, but I believe you were looking more for a effect which would boost your piercing power and speed, right?" Naruto continued. Kurui raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, I was going for extra speed." "How did you know?" Kurui asked the blonde, who smiled kindly back at the dark-skinned girl, which blushed a bit. "I trained a bit with Raiten a bit, and from a few experiments I figured out that the way you conduct the electricity through your sword affects the result you get. For example, if you let your electricity run wild within the blade off your sword, you'll get a electrocution effect, while if you keep it controlled and spread evenly throughout the entire sword, you'll get more of paralyze effect, which is what you were getting. Furthermore, if you concentrate your lightning going up your blade and towards the tip, will increase your piercing effect, and lastly, if you concentrate the lightning on the sharpened edge of the blade, it will increase the speed which the sword can cut through air and will give it a better ability to cut through armor and flesh." Naruto explained to the group of genin the theory behind using lightning chakra in their swords. The jaws of the three dropped when they heard everything Naruto had to say. Even Killer B was a little surprised with all that the blonde knew. "The next match will be between Shino Abarame and Shikamaru Naru," the proctor said. "I give up. There is no point in me fighting since I am unable to put all of Shino's bugs under my Kage main no jutsu, and even if I got Shino under my control, his bugs would still be active and would swarm me the second I catch Shino," Shikamaru said with his eyes closed as he leaned back against the wall of the building. Hayate nodded at the reasoning. "Winner Shino Abarame. Next match will be between Seouri Uchiha and Kankuro of Suna," the proctor called out. Seouri jumped over the rails while Kankuro did the same from where he was standing. "Fight!" Hayate yelled as to begin the battle between the Konoha and Suna ninja. Seouri started the battle by performing a series of hand signs before Katon Grand Fireball Jutsu. She yelled as she exhaled a large fireball from her mouth, which went searing towards the Suna shinobi, who jumped out of the way. Seouri didn't give Kankuro a chance to counter against her. She pulled out 6 konao and threw them at the puppet user. Kankuro, seeing the weapons coming at him, pulled out his own konao and used it to block the 6 projectiles before he threw it at Seouri. The female Uchiha backflipped backwards as to avoid the konao. "Katon Phoenix Flower Jutsu," she said before she exhaled a barrage of small fireballs at Kankuro. The Suna genin saw this coming and substituted himself with a log which came out of nowhere. Seouri ducked as several senbon flew over her head. From the purple drops coming of the needles after they hit the wall, she assumed that they were poisoned. See that Kankuro was behind her, she turned. and charged at him. Once she was close enough, she landed a powerful punch to Kankuro's stomach, only for two sets of arms wrapping her. Before Kankuro could do anything, she substituted herself with a log before several blades coming out of Kankuro's chest ripped right through the log. So Kankuro used the old puppet trick, huh? Good thing Sa-chan managed to escape in time. Naruto thought to himself. As he watched the battle, he was really impressed with how Seouri was handling the battle so far, but that was without Kankuro using his puppets. Let's see how handle him now that he has his puppets out. Seouri was already stronger than Sasuke was back when he was in Konoha. The bundle on the back of the puppets unraveled to reveal Kankuro. Well, I thought that last trick I set up was going to beat you, but since you were able to escape it, I guess I'll have to do it. Kankuro said as he smirked as he held Crow in front of him with his chakra strings. Let's see you try. Seouri said as she activated her Sharingan before she charged in at Kankuro, who sent Crow at her. Crow's hands turned into four large knives which Kankuro used to try and impale the Uchiha, who jumped to the side and lashed out with a kick to the side of Crow's head. Crow went flying, but Kankuro stabilized it in mid-air and brought it towards himself just in time to block another physical attack from Seouri. Before the black-haired girl was able to pull away, Crow managed to hit her with about a dozen poisoned senbon. Seouri fell to a knee as she felt the poison starting to circulate throughout her body. Give up now and I'll give you the antidote, Kankuro said with a wide smirk as he saw her struggling to breathe with the poison spreading throughout her body. I will and not give up. I have to become strong so I can beat him. Seouri panted out as she stood back up and glared at the sand shinobi. She could feel the dark power of the curse mark trying to enter her chakra stream, but the seal that Naruto had put on her was blocking it. Come on. Just use my power. A dark voice yelled in her head, shouted at her. The voice sounded exactly like hers, only it had a vengeful and dark undertone. You know you want my power. It's the only way you can win. The voice continued to push her to use the power of the curse mark and break the seal that Naruto had put on her. No. Naruto said to never use the power of the curse mark. Seouri yelled back at the evil voice within her head, who laughed back at her like she had just said the funniest thing ever. Ha! That hypocrite told you not to use my power? Please, his chakra almost identical to my own, only far more potent. He isn't even human from what I can tell from his chakra. On top of that, his chakra is far more malicious than anything I could ever create. He is just scared of what you could become. He fears you because he knows you can become someone who can kill him. Dark Seouri said to her host. Seouri felt herself fade from the real world and appeared on a plain with black grass and a blood-red sky with a red moon overhead. Where am I? Seouri asked as she looked around the plain. There was absolutely nothing but black grass and the red sky. This is your mind, Seouri-chan, Dark Seouri said as she phased into existence in front of Seouri. She looked exactly like herself, only that she had paler skin than she did and had yellow snake-like eyes. She wore a black robe that wrapped around her figure. Around her neck was a choker with the Kishin Fujin on it. Come on. Take this collar off of me and I'll give you the power you need to beat Itachi. Dark Seouri said to the Uchiha, who looked at the seal with interest. Is it worth it? Is power worth betraying Naruto's trust? She thought to herself as she took a step towards Dark Seouri. He's holding you back, Seouri-chan. He's trying to weaken you so that you never betray the village. He wants you to be weak. Release the seal and I'll give you everything you've ever wanted. I'll give you the power you need to avenge your clan and bring it into a new age of power. She continued to tempt as Seouri slowly walked toward her before she gripped the collar. Seouri's eyes had a thick haze to show how influenced she was. Do it? Dark Seouri said with a wide grin as she felt Seouri tugging on the collar. However, before Seouri could completely rip the seal off, a massive claw smacked Dark Seouri away. Seouri's eyes snapped wide open as the haze that had overtaken her Seouri looked up to see a massive monster with 10 gigantic tails. The monster was almost completely black, with the only exception being the one massive eye and its long tongue. It had a human-like torso covered in black scales. It had several spikes coming out of its back and head. "What the hell are you?" Seouri shouted as she took a few steps back, away from the massive monster. Dark Seouri's laugh echoed from where she was sent flying towards. The dark version of Seouri appeared in front of Seouri. "Oh, you don't know? That's your dear lover Naruto's true form." Seouri's eyes widened when she heard this as she looked up at the monster. "No way, there is no way that Naruto could be that thing," she thought to herself in fear. Was Naruto really lying to them all and was a monster in form of a human? "And Naruto-kun," Seouri said with a stutter. The massive beast turned to her with a depressed expression. "S-chan, I'm sorry that I hid this from you, and Naruto-chan, I didn't know how the two of you would react," the massive monster said, in a booming voice that made the entire world rumble. Seouri could hear the sincerity in the monster's voice and knew that the monster was actually Naruto, like her clone had said. "So that's really you, Naruto-kun?" Seouri asked as the massive beast lowered its head so that it was face to face with Seouri, who was looking into his massive single eye, who was filled with sadness and anguish. "Yes, long time ago I had to seal away the beast called the Juubi within myself, but doing this turned me into this. I am Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, Nidame Juubi no Kishin," the Juubified Naruto said to Seouri, who was deep in thought. "I'll explain more to both you and Naruto-chan back after the preliminaries," Naruto said before he turned to Dark Seouri, who was smirking at her victory in proving that Naruto was a monster. "What are you looking at, monster?" she said with a bit of humor filling her voice. Naruto narrowed his eye. "My seal may not have completely sealed you away because of how tired I was, but that doesn't mean I can't suppress you even further now that inside Seouri's mind." Dark Seouri's eyes widened as Naruto picked her up with one of his massive clawed hands. "Suffer in the Tsukiyomi," Naruto said as the 9 tomo in his eyes spun wildly around the 3 inner circles. Dark Seouri faded as she was sent deeper into Seouri's subconscious, where she would be stuck in the Tsukiyomi until it wore off, and since Naruto was at full power inside of Seouri's mind, it would be a long time before she would awaken from the nightmare Naruto was going to put her through. Looking back at Seouri, Naruto frowned. "I've suppressed her completely now. She will no longer try and influence you anymore for a few months at most. Please don't hate me for what I am," Naruto said before his eye started to spin once again as he sent Seouri and himself out of the mindscape. Real world. Seouri took in a deep breath as her consciousness re-entered the real world. She hesitated for a second, giving Kankuro to send his puppet at her. Seouri jumped out of the way. Her body was still burning from the poison flowing through her bloodstream. Looking up at Naruto from the corner of her eye, "I don't hate you, Naruto-kun," she thought before she decided to finish the battle. Using a shunshin which surprised many jonin, she appeared in front of Kankuro and landed a strong kick, sending the sand shinobi up into the air. Jumping over Kankuro, Seouri landed a massive kick, sending the shinobi smashing down into the ground. See that Kankuro wasn't going to get back up. The proctor called the match, making Seouri the winner before Seouri fell back because of the poison in her bloodstream. 4 medics came in and took the 2 to the hospital in the tower. Naruto secretly made a shadow clone and sent it after Seouri under the form of a small mouse. Next up was Narumi and Neji, which Naruto thought would be a good battle even if he was sure that Narumi would win, but a good battle nonetheless. The 2 fighters jumped down to the ground and waited for Hade to start the battle between the 2. Neji had already activated his Byakugan and was in his gentle fist stance. As the fight started, Neji charged at Narumi, who started to pre-form a long series of hand signs. "Futon, great breakthrough," Narumi said as she exhaled a large gust of wind at the Hyuga, who jumped out of the way just in time to dodge the attack. Neji charged forward again and attempted to block Narumi's chakra points. Just as he was about to strike her, she substituted herself with a chunk for the wall that had broken off during the other fights. Niji, using Byakugan, knew where she was the second she reappeared. Niji shot at the blonde kunoichi. Narumi wasn't able to dodge in time and got hit on the side of her left arm. Narumi jumped away as to not get another point blocked. Niji smirked when he saw the Uzumaki grab her arm in pain. "Does it hurt, girl? You can't fight against fate, and your fate is to lose by my hands," Niji said as he came at Narumi, who used some of the Kyuubi's chakra inside of her to reopen her chakra point before dodging the Hyuga's attack. In the stands, Hinata was glaring down at Niji. "Niji, I swear if you hurt her I will rip off your balls and shove them down your throat," the Hyuga heiress thought to herself as she watched the battle. She then glared at Naruto, who was watching the battle calmly without any sign of emotion showing through. "And I will get my Naru-chan back from you, bastard," she thought as she glared at the man who took the heart of the one she loved. Naruto could sense the Hyuga's glare on him. It really was a shock how different this Hinata was compared to his world's Hinata. This one was a tsundere like he had never seen before. She was cold and harsh to everyone minus his female counterpart, who she was in love with. "It seems that Kami loves to fuck with me," Naruto thought as he looked over at the blue-haired girl. His eyes turned to Madara's Sharingan for a split second before he went back to watching the battle. Narumi used the shadow clone jutsu to create 25 copies of herself. The 25 copies charged at the Hyuga, who tensed and waited for all of them to get close to him. Once they all were within range, the pale-eyed teenager started to spin rapidly, 8 trigrams palm rotation, Niji said as he was engulfed in a large blue dome of chakra. All the clones were blasted back and dispersed from the blow. Narumi charged up a Rasengan and charged at the Hyuga, who had just finished rotating. "Rasengan," she yelled as she approached the brown-haired teen. However, the Hyuga's reflexes kicked in and he managed to dodge the attack mostly, but the band holding his ponytail was shredded, letting his hair loose. Before Narumi could do anything, Niji was already in his stance. "Fate has brought both of us to this moment, Namikaze-san. You are in my field of division, 8 trigrams 64 palms," Niji announced, much to the surprise of Hinata, who knew that the 64 palms was only thought in the main branch. 2 palms, Niji said as he delivered the first 2 strikes. 4 palms, 2 more hits. 8 palms, 4 more strikes were delivered. 16 palms, Niji said as he delivered another set of 8 strikes to Narumi's body. 32 palm, 64 palm, Niji said as he struck Narumi another 32 times. Before finishing with a two-handed thrust which sent Narumi flying against the wall of the building. Hinata was visually furious at what her cousin had done to the girl she loved. Niji relaxed a bit as he started to walk back towards the stairs. "She's already down. Might as well call the match because she isn't getting back up," Niji said with a smug look. "I'm not done yet," Narumi said as she stood back up with a red aura surrounding her. Her canines elongated and her nails became sharper as her eyes turned red with slits for pupils. Naruto narrowed his eyes when he saw this. He didn't expect his lover to have to pull out the Kyuubi this early on in the exams, but he could see why. Niji was also stronger now than he was in his world. He already had the rotation and 64 palms. This early? Well, this match is over, Naruto thought as he let out a sigh. Before Niji could react, he was punched in the jaw by the enraged blonde. "Fate doesn't decide what happened in my life. I decide what happens," Narumi yelled as she charged at the downed Hyuga, who was getting back up from the powerful punch. He had a small trail of blood coming from his mouth. Niji was able to stand back up on his feet and readied himself for Narumi's attack. As the blonde got close enough to the pale-eyed teen, started to rotate rapidly once more. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki saw what was going to happen and tried to stop, but she was too late and her momentum carried her into the side of the dome, which blasted her back. Narumi stood back once more with her clothes shredded but still able to hide her Modesty from everyone. I'm not done yet, she said as a small trail of blood dripped down the middle of her face. Her entire body screamed in pain as she formed another raise-non, but unlike the last this one was much bigger and had a red tint to it. Otama raise-non, she yelled as she charged once again at the Hyuga. Niji scowled when he saw her charging back at him. You don't learn, do you? Fate has decided me the winner. Rotation, the Hyuga yelled as the Namikaze pushed her giant raise-non at him. The two techniques clashed with each other in a huge show of power. The sound of the two spiraling attack grinding together echoed across the room. All the genin had to hold their ears to protect them from the piercing sound. The clash ended in an explosion of smoke. Everyone waited with bated breath as they watched the smoke slowly clear away from the scene. The first thing they saw was the shadow of a person with long hair, which at this point was distinguishable from the two fighters. As more of the dust cloud cleared, it revealed the two mounds of the standing figure's chest. The smoke completely cleared to show Narumi in rags standing over a defeated Niji whose outfit was also in rags. Winner Narumi Uzumaki Namikaze. Hayate announced to everyone who cheered for the blonde. Seeing that his lover was going to faint, Naruto appeared beside her and caught her before she hit the floor. You did well, Naru-chan, now rest, Naruto said as he looked over at the sandaime, who nodded. The blonde quickly blurred out of existence with his female counterpart and made his way to the hospital within the tower to drop off Narumi and to check how Inyuko and Seouri were doing, but not before making a clone to watch the rest of the battles for him. Arriving at the large room, Naruto made his way to the empty bed beside Seouri, who was also asleep. Naruto did a quick diagnostic jutsu on the two girls to check if there was anything wrong with them before going to check on Inyuko. Much to his surprise, the Inuzuka heiress was awake already, even though she had some nasty burns. Hey Naruto-kun, his girlfriend said weakly to him. Hey Inu-chan. Save your strength, you're still hurt, Naruto said as he preformed a healing jutsu to heal some of the burns that the medical ninja couldn't heal themselves. Inyuko couldn't help but let out a small moan at the feeling that spread over her entire body as Naruto used some nature chakra to heal her. Naruto frowned when he saw that he couldn't heal all her burns, which he would have to leave to heal naturally. He wasn't used to healing others, and while his chakra would heal others better than other standard medics, he still wasn't able to heal anyone on the same level which his world Sakura or Tsunade could. Sorry Inu-chan, I can't heal you anymore, Naruto said in a depressed tone. His mood was lifted when he saw the brunette smile kindly at him. It warmed his heart knowing that the girl loved him as much as he did her. It's fine Naruto-kun, I feel much better than before now since you healed the worst of the burns, the dog girl said to the blonde, who smiled kindly. But can you please tell me what happened to your left arm? She asked with a tone so sweet that it promised to cause him pain if he dared to lie. Naruto sighed and started to explain what had happened during the Forest of Death and the events involving Orochimaru, and even went as far as to tell her about him being the Juubi, which she way better than he had expected her to. He planned on telling everyone who he felt he could trust, which included Narumi, Seouri, Ino, Hiruzen, Jiraiya, and Danzo. 3 of those were his girlfriends, while the other 3 were the village leaders. So you don't think I'm a monster? Naruto asked the brunette, who nodded. Naruto-kun, centuries ago one of my ancestors mated with a dog demon which started our clan. How could I hate you for being what you are when my own clan stemmed off a demon? Besides, even if you are a biju, you also a great guy and the man I love, Inyuko said with no small amount of affection. Naruto's eyes widened slightly before he smiled endearingly at her. I love you too, Inu-chan, Naruto said as he leaned down for a quick kiss. Inyuko looked a bit embarrassed but finally worked up the courage to say what she wanted to say. And Naruto-kun, can I ask you something? She asked the blonde, who smiled back at her. But you just did, Naruto said with a teasing grin. Yeah, ask away. After I get better, could you please take my She started but said the last part in a whisper which Naruto couldn't hear. Even with his super hearing he could only hear the first sound of the word, which was Avir. Can you say that again? I couldn't hear you. Naruto said as he raised an eyebrow. I asked if why you could take my virginity, she said in a hushed tone which Naruto had to strain his ears to hear. Naruto's eyes widened when he heard this. Sure, he had taken both Seouri's and Narumi's virginity, but he had spent far more time with them than Inyako since they were on the same team, but he thought that she might want to wait a while. Sure. Naruto said with a small smile. I would be honored to be the one to be with you. Naruto said before he heard Inyako yawn a bit. You're still tired and injured, get some more sleep. Naruto said as he placed a small genjutsu to get her to rest some more. Walking over to his other two girlfriends, he started to heal them as best he could, which wasn't enough to get them out of the hospital until a few days later, maybe a day for Narumi. Now all he had to do was wait until they woke up so that he could talk to them about his status as Juubi. Later Naruto stood next to the other winners of the preliminaries as they waited for the proctors. The people there were Naruto, Hinata, Samui, Gaia, Temari, Shino, Ino, and Yujito. Seouri and Narumi were still in the tower hospital, so they couldn't be there in person, but were put together in the final match for the first round. He had thought about what had happened since Orochimaru's attack in the forest and what had happened in the preliminaries. Everyone was stronger now than in his world, even if it was only by a small margin, and that not all events went the same as he had once thought. On top of that, he being in this world was also bound to alter the series of events that would have happened. He was the one who saved Haku and Zabuza and was the one who got Danzo on his side. He also underestimated the curse mark on Seouri and how strong it truly was. He was not going to screw up this invasion. I will have to tell them the truth. Naruto thought to himself. Alright, each of you will draw a number to decide who you will fight during the final round. Hayate said as he moved from Naruto, who was on the left, to the right, ending with Gaia. 3, Naruto said. I, Hinata announced. 2, Samui said in her normal cold tone. 4, Gaia said. 7, Temari got. 8, Ino said out loud. 5, Shino said quietly. 6, Yujito said as she held up her number. The Hokage nodded at the matches. This worked out well for them, because if Naruto could knock out Gaia before she transformed, then he and Danzo wouldn't have to take on Orochimaru by themselves, since while still powerful they were old as dirt in the shinobi world, with the only one older than them being Oniki the Tsuchikage. So the matches will be Hinata Hyuga vs Samui of Kyumo first, followed by Naruto Namikaze vs Gaia of Sun, then Shino Abarame vs Yujito Nii, following them will be Ino Yamanaka vs Temari of Suna, and lastly it will be Seouri Uchiha vs Narumi Uzumaki Namikaze. You all have a month to improve your skill, since most of you have shown some of your abilities already today. Now go and rest. Hiruzen said as they all left, with the exception of Naruto, who watched everyone else leave the two shinobi. Jiji, I have something important to tell both you and the others back at the tower. I believe that with the events to come I may have to unveil the truth about myself. Naruto said as he showed the old man the stub he had in place of his arm before it started to regrow at a rapid pace, much to the surprise of the cage, until it was a new arm. It was one of the most awe-inspiring yet disgusting things the old man had ever seen, and trust him when he said he had seen some really disgusting things before, like Orochimaru's original experiments. Naruto-kun, what did you just do? The old man asked as he examined Naruto's new arm. It is one of my powers that I will tell you guys about. After thinking it over after Seouri's battle, I realized that Orochimaru in this world might do some things different from the one in my own, so I believe it's best if I told you guys the truth about who and what I am now, rather than in the middle of battle. I've already told Narumi, Seouri, and Inyako, and they accepted in thank Kami. Naruto said as he put his coat back on, but let out a sigh when he thought about how well the two girls had handled it. Like Inyako, they both said that it didn't matter what he was, only who he was, and he was the man they loved. The old man nodded before the two left the tower in the forest of death. and started their way to the secret meeting room in the Hokage's tower. Hokage's meeting room. In the dark room lit only by a few candles, 5 men sat in a circular table with a map of Konoha printed on it. The 5 were Jiraiya of the Sunin, Danzo Shimura the leader or root Umbu, the current Umbu commander, Hiruzen Sarutobi the Sandaime Hokage, and Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze the second Juubi and current Namikaze clan head. Naruto had just finished explaining just what he was and what he could do because of what he was. Saying that the 4 were shocked was an understatement. They all were dumbfounded when Naruto told them that we was really the equivalent of all the Bijus combined into a single body. While they were a little wary that the blonde could destroy everyone in the village single high-handed, but knew what the blonde hadn't done anything that had hurt the village so far, and reassured them that he would help them as long as they didn't turn on him. So the plan is still going as planned, the Umbu captain asked the others, who nodded. Then I will be off to start preparing my men for the battle to come next month, the Umbu said as he left the room through Shunshin. Naruto turned to Jiraiya. Jiraiya-san, I need you to train Narumi during the month. While she is good, she is nowhere near the level needed to take on Gaia or Temari, Naruto said to the white-haired sage, who nodded. The Jinchuriki was good, but she wasn't even close to the level of the Akatsuki members or Orochimaru. Will do, Naruto-kun, Jiraiya said with a large smirk as he started to plan about what he should teach his student's daughter. I'll teach her some new jutsu and some physical stuff, the white-haired man said. Naruto nodded but then glared at the pervert. But if I find out that you wasted her time peeking on girls, I'll beat the perverseness out of you, Naruto threatened the sage, who nodded. One did not anger the strongest being in the world, it was a stupid idea to do so. What will you be doing during the month? Danzo asked the blonde Biju, who looked at the bandaged man. I will be with my girls for the first week and then out of the village for the last 2 weeks for some special training that I can't do inside the village, Naruto answered the Kage's question. The 4 continued to finalize the plans for the defense and counter-attack for the battle that would come. 1 week later, Naruto was walking side by side with Inyuko as they walked towards her house in the Inyazuka compound. She had been cleared to leave the hospital today and was finally cashing in Naruto's promise to take her virginity. Naruto laid on Inyuko's bed stark naked as he watched his girlfriend strip right in front of him. Inyuko was now only in a tan thong and bra which was barely large enough to hold her large C-cups. Inyuko turned back to Naruto with a seductive grin which grew larger when she saw little Naruto standing at attention. Oh, does my Narukoi like what he sees? She said as she crawled over him, showing him a heavenly amount of cleavage. Her thin panties were soaked already and the 2 hadn't even started. I don't want any foreplay, so let's get to the real deal, she said, before ripping off the tiny bit of fabric to reveal her dripping twat. Not even giving Naruto a chance to say anything, she slammed down her hips. Inyuko let out a loud howl when she felt Naruto's prick pierced her hymen. A bit of blood dripped out from her lower folds, but Inyuko didn't care about the pain, but rather the mind-numbing pleasure that was coursing through her entire body. She finally felt complete now that she had found her mate. Are you okay, Inyuko? Naruto asked when he saw tears starting to form in her eyes. Inyuko smiled down at him as she wiped away the tears. Yes, I am, Narukoi. It's just that I'm so happy that I finally found my mate, Inyuko said, smiling kindly at the blonde under her. In our family, once a male has sex with a woman with the exception of rape, it is the same as marriage. This marriage can only be broken if one of the 2 dies or one betrays the clan like my father did, she said as he joy faltered when she remembered how crushed her mother was after her father left them. Naruto saw the Inyuko's smile fall a bit when she talked about her father. Don't worry, Inyuko-chan, I'll never leave you, Naruto said as he placed his hands on her hips while the dog girl lifted her hips. Are you ready? Naruto asked the girl, who smirked. Naruto guided her hips as she slammed down on him. The sound of flesh slapping against flesh echoed across the room. The moans of pleasure filled the room as they two animals went at it like dogs in heat. It wasn't long before Inyuko's moans turned into howls of pleasures. Her eyes were wide and glazed over from the intense feeling within her. Tongue hung out of her gaping mouth, giving her a fuck stupid look. Looking down at Naruto, she leaned forward and captured his lips in a sloppy kiss that showed how little control she had left over her body. All she could think about right now was pleasing herself and her lover. Naruto grunted as she sped up her movements. Not wanting to be outdone, he used his Jinten to increase his own thrusts. Harder, Narukoi. Fuck me faster. She cried out as her breast bounced within their restraint. Naruto smirked as he reached up and ripped the bra right off her body. Naruto grabbed her left breasts with his right hand while he brought the right one into his mouth. The Inyazuka let out another howl as Naruto started to suck on her light pink nipple. With his hand, Naruto gave the bube massage that sent Inyuko even deeper into the madness known as pleasure. Yes, twist my nipples. Inyuko screamed out as Naruto pinched and pulled on her nipple. Inyuko had a massive orgasm, finally letting out all the tension Tot had been building up in her. Inyuko's mind was already turning to mush as the two went at it. Naruto knew his limit was coming as his thrusts now increased in speed and power. With a loud grunt, Naruto shot his load of baby batter into the girl's womb. Inyuko slumped forward onto Naruto's broad chest with a bit of saliva pouring out of her mouth onto it. Inyuko couldn't think of a single moment in her life that had felt better than this day. Getting up on her knees, she kissed Naruto again, but with much more control than before. That was amazing, Narukoi, Inyuko whispered into his ear. Let's do it again, as turned around and showed Naruto her plum ass. This is my clan's specialty. The doggy style, she said as sweat dripped from her naked body. Naruto smirked as he got on his knees and aligned his re-hardened rod with her slit and pushed into her. Inyuko gasped as Naruto started to fuck her. Compared to the last time, this was a million times better. Naruto pounded into her without restraint. They were so into their activities that they didn't notice two figures sneak into the room. Look at this, Hana-chan, a female voice said as Inyuko's mom-san walked forward. Naruto looked up at the clan head of the Inyazukas, who walked into the room with her older daughter Hana behind her. Both were completely naked and smelled of lust. It's been almost 15 years since I was with a man, and Hana here is already of age and still single, and if she hadn't heard Inyuko's cry of pleasure, I would have worried that she would never marry. Some said as she got on the large bed and placed her twat in front of her youngest daughter's face. Eat me out, bitch, Some commanded her daughter. Inyuko didn't even fight back as she started to lick the hole she came from. Some moaned lightly as she felt her daughter eating out of her. Hana moved next to Naruto and captured his lips. While Naruto had been a little conflicted at first, he took it in stride. Inyuko was too into the sex to care that her mother and sister had joined in. Naruto continued to thrust into Inyuko before making two shadow clones. The two clones went around and got behind the two older Inyazukas. The first clone dug his manhood deep into Hana's hole, causing her to break the makeout session she had going with the real Naruto to let out a scream as her hymen was ripped. When the other clone got behind Some, he noticed that Inyuko was keeping Some's twat busy, so he went for the next best thing, her ass. Plunging into her ass, Naruto's clone almost blew his load right there from how tight it was. The Inyazuka clan's head wasn't any better as her eyes snapped open as her ass was stretched by Naruto's rod. This was her first time getting fucked up the ass, and the Naruto clone wasn't going to wait for her. Some cried out in both pain and pleasure as Naruto drilled right into her ass. It was like nothing she had ever felt before. It was both amazing but painful, like nothing she had ever felt. Ah! That's it, Narukoi. Bang me like that. Some cried out as she was fucked up the anus by the blonde demon. Naruto grinned evilly and used Jinten to go even fast. Hana was also having the time of her life as the Naruto clone fucked her just as hard as her mother was getting. Unlike before, she had now full embraced her feral side and started to lose control, almost like her younger sister. Had just before. The entire compound could hear the cries of pleasures coming from the main house as Naruto rocked the worlds of the three Inyazuka royalty. Every human and ninja dog looked at the house where the cries, moans, and howls of pleasures. Lucky dog, the men of the clan thought as they knew who was with their leaders and future leader. Back with Naruto, they four had changed their positions. Naotsum was on her back on the bed with her legs spread wide open while Naruto fucked her and claimed her as one of his mates. Hana sat on top of her mother's face and made out with her sister while Naruto ate Inyako out. Naotsum was eating Hana out while a clone butt fucked Hana. Naruto's clone plowed into Hana's anus while groping her large D cups. Naotsum's breasts were bouncing as round wildly as Naruto pounded into her and filled her up several times over as well as the other two. Yes. I'm your bitch now. Naotsum yelled out as Naruto rammed into her. She was loving the power that he was putting behind each and every cinch thrust. Harder. Faster. Hana howled out as Naruto ripped through her ass. She no longer felt pain from it but only pure pleasure. Her mind, like her sisters and mothers, were now completely focused on sex. He hoped that none of them were pregnant. He wasn't ready to be a father yet, and who knew what would happen when he fought the Akatsuki again. Imagination, Naruto and Pain clashed together as both let loose their Shinra Tensei and blasted each other back. Before Naruto could charge at Pain again, he felt a tug on his pant. Looking down, he saw a feral-looking boy with blonde hair and brown eyes. "Daddy, I made poop," the child said to his father. Pain looked at the scene awkwardly before started to chuckle before he erupted in laughter. Behind him, the rest of the Akatsuki came up behind him and started to laugh at him, even Itaki, as he was forced to retreat to change his son. Real-world Naruto shuddered at the thought. The four eventually changed so that Hana and Inyako were a dog position, making out while Naruto and a clone fucked both of their pussies raw. Both of the girls had a constant stream of love juices coming out from their womanhood as Naruto further proved himself to be their god in bed. Naotsum was a bit away, having an entire orgy by herself. She had a Naruto clone fucking her ass while another fucker her twat. She was giving another clone a blowjob while another fucked her large tits. Her arms weren't without use as she have two other clones' hand jobs. She was no longer Tsum, head of Inyazuka, but rather Tsum the Juubi's bitch, as she started to call herself after Naruto and Inyako told them the entire story. The four had been going at it for 4 hours now and were getting tired from the constant sex. Naruto had already had about 10 orgasms between himself and the clones. Each of the girls had even more than Naruto. That day Naruto proved to everyone that he wasn't just a war god but a sex god as well. He also, however, further solidified in the minds of many that he was Minato because he was known for the same thing before he got married to Kushina. Naruto laid next to the three girls who had started to refer to themselves as the Juubi's bitches, since bitch meant female dog and in turn was not a derogatory term within the clan, with their mates. Next day Naruto limped out of the Inyazuka compound and made his way back home to go pack for a trip to Kaminari no Kuni. After the meeting with Hiruzen, Danzo, and Jiraiya, Naruto got the idea to negotiate with the Raikage to get him to help out during the invasion. From his time in Kaminari no Kuni, he knew that they had a lack of wood for fires during the winter and much of the village had to suffer from the cold. He was sure that if he and the Raikage could come to a deal at the right price, and also the fact that he was a primordial god also gave him a backup plan if needed. The third Hokage had already agreed to Naruto's plan and had made Naruto the official negotiator between the villages. He didn't have to say bye to Narumi or Seouri since both had already left to train with Jiraiya or Kazumi. After getting everything he needed, he waited for his temporary teammates, Genma and Yamato. The three were to head for the Land of Lightning and make contact with the squad of Kumo Jonin who would take them to the village. "Hey. Their name Akazi-sama," Genma said as he calmly walked towards the blonde. Genma had brown, shoulder-length hair which hanged about his face and brown eyes. He wore his forehead protector like a bandana, and the standard Jonin outfit and had his trademark senbon in his mouth. "Genma-san, please just call me Naruto," the blonde said with a smile. The blonde was currently wearing his long-sleeve white haori which split into 10 tails at the waist. He wore black umbu-style pants and long-sleeve shirt. "Yamato isn't able to come with us, he was requested by Jiraiya Yadano to help with Narumi's training," Genma said to the Biju, who nodded. "That's alright, this will be an easy mission anyways." A few days later in Kaminari no Kuni, Naruto and Genma had finally arrived in the mountainous village. After several days of travel, they were greeted at the border of the country by the squad of Kyumo Jonin. Now Naruto and Genma were on their way to speak with the leader of the village. Naruto had to admit that the village was quite nice when it wasn't in the middle of war. "We're here," one of the Jonin said as they arrived at the largest building in the village. Naruto nodded and entered the metal building. "Excuse me, do you have an appointment with Raikage-sama?" the receptionist asked the two shinobi. "Yeah, we're here for the negotiations between the lead and the Cloud. I am Naruto Namikaze, I represent the Hokage in the matter," Naruto said in an even tone. In these kinds of situations he had to stay calm and not let the other group get an edge in the negotiations. "Here you are," the woman said as she pulled out a card. "He'll be with you in a second," she finished as she left to go inform the Raikage that the Konoha negotiators had arrived. Naruto and Genma waited a bit before they heard a loud crash. Both were on guard when the receptionist came back down sweating bullets. "The Raikage will now see you." Naruto and Genma walked to where the lady had told them the office was to find a large hole next to the door. A looked at them through the hole. "Are the two of you just going to stand there all day? Come in, you can use the hole if you want," he said before he started to curl. A was a large dark-skinned man with hulking muscles. He had combed back nearly while blonde hair with a small mustache and beard and pronounced cheekbones. He wore his Raikage haori leaving his chest out for display. "So, the two of you want to negotiate with me, huh? Well, tell me what you're offering," A said as he continued to curl the weight. Naruto nodded and summoned a scroll. "This scroll has the terms of the deal. In exchange for Kyumo's support during Orochimaru's attack on my village, Konoha will supply Kyumo with a substantial amount of firewood and other flora and fruits that are found within the fire country. Your village will also gain a generous monetary reward." Naruto went over the terms of the deal. A read over the scroll and checked to make sure that there were no hidden terms that would put his village at a what he could see there were none, so he had Mavi check just to make sure. There are no hidden parts of the deal, what they said was true, Mavi informed her leader. A nodded slowly and turned to Naruto. "We will accept these terms, but something else has brought my attention," A said as he tooled out a scroll from his haori. "A few days ago, one of my best shinobi, Killer B, informed me that you are special. A said as he gave Naruto the scroll. "Genma-san, please go wait back at the tower entrance," Naruto said as his eyes gained a new serious undertone. His voice no longer held the warmth it once had. Naruto had gotten serious. The bandana-wearing shinobi nodded and left the room. Naruto looked at Mabi. "Does she know?" The Raikage nodded. "Yes, she has my absolute trust. After all, she is my wife," A said with a wide smirk as she smacked Mabi in the ass. The brunette blushed deeply and hit A over the head before storming out of the room. "Nice catch, huh?" A asked with a light chuckle. "I'd say so. I recently took the hand of the Inyazuka clan Hetsum and her two daughters Hana and Inyako at the same time," Naruto said with his own smirk. "Good job, kid," A said as he nodded sagely. Naruto had to say that this world's A was way better than his world's. This A was still serious but knew how to be a guy, unlike the A back where he was from, who was a prude to the highest degree. But back to business. "While the fact that you are either the new Juubi or Rakudo Sennin does worry me, I have thought of a way to benefit both of us and your village," the Raikage said as he took out a scroll. "What's this?" Naruto said as he opened the scroll. It is a treaty between our villages. It will lower tariffs and tax rates between trade from one village to another, allow for mission to be carried out with shinobi from both villages and a pact which if one of our villages gets into a war, the other will assist the other. A outline the terms of the treaty. Furthermore, to solidify the treaty, Kyumo will offer you Samui, Kurui, and Yujito Nii as your wives. They are to show how much trust I'm putting on you since all three are like daughters to me. So, do you accept? Do they know about this? Naruto asked since he didn't want to force others to marry him. A nodded, yes, they were informed and agreed to it. They will go stay in your village as permanent Kyumo shinobi stationed there and will be wed to you. So do you accept the terms? Naruto nodded and shook the large man's hand, and much to A's surprise managed to match him in physical strength. It's been nice doing business with you, Adano. Naruto said with a deep bow and picked up the two scrolls which A had signed for him. A let out a loud laugh. You might as well start calling me Atosan since you'll be married to my three adoptive daughters soon. Naruto smiled before walking back to Genma in the waiting room. Ready? Genma asked. Yeah, let's just use Hiraishin to go back. Naruto said as he grabbed Genma's shoulders as vanished in a split second back in A's office. The hulking man looked out his window at the village. I hope you can protect them, Naruto-san. Especially Yujito with what's to come. A thought to himself before going back to his paperwork. All the winners of the preliminaries had gathered at the Chunin exam stadium. The crowd roared as thousands shinobi and civilians from the Kyumo, Konoha, and Suna plus many diplomats from all across continent. In the highest stand in the arena, the Raikage, Hokage, and Orochimaru disguised as the Kazekage sat. Naruto was standing next to the others down in the field. He had to hold back the urge to kill the many people in the arena himself since many were muttering about how it was unfair that Minato Namikaze was in the exams. I'm not my fucking father. Naruto thought to himself in rage. My name is Genma Shiranui. The original Proctor Hade had an unfortunate accident during a mission. The bandana-wearing shinobi said as he placed a senbon in his mouth. Naruto hadn't been able to make it back to the village in time to save Hade and he was still pissed about it. It was so long ago when it had happened back in his world that it had slipped his mind. How could I make such an oversight? I should have fixed this before I left. I'm sorry, Nico-chan. Naruto thought to himself in a bit of self-hatred. Nico had always protected him when he was younger in his world and he had failed her when he could have saved the one she loved. The first match will now begin. Everyone other. Then Samui form Kyumo and Hinata Hyuga of Konoha please go to the participants section of the stands. Genma said. Everyone left to their seats except Samui and Hinata. Naruto sat between Seouri and Narumi. So do you think Hinata-san will win? Seouri asked her lover who shrugged. I don't really know. From what I can gather they both have very similar bodies built for speed, but Samui's body has more muscle than Hinata but will be slower. In terms of chakra and ability, Samui has more chakra by a small margin than Hinata and has better sword skills. Hinata on the other hand has her Byakugan and her Jyoken. However, I say that Samui will win if exactly who her father is has had an effect on her training. Naruto finished as the match started. Hinata let out a battle cry as she charged at her opponent. Her Byakugan was already active as she went to strike Samui down with a hit to the heart which the busty blonde easily dodged. I will not lose, I will have my Narumi. She told herself as she continued to lash out at the Kyumo Kunoichi. Samui was barely able to dodge all the attacks from the Hyuga. She's fast, the cold Kunoichi thought to herself as she dodged another what would be fatal strike. This is not cool. Samui mumbled as she jumped away from the Hyuga. Hinata glared at her and charged again. I can't beat her in hand-to-hand combat but I have my sword. She thought as she drew her blade. Charging it with lightning chakra, she swung it in the air and released a wave of electricity at the Hyuga heiress. The Kyuga smirked as she gracefully dodged the attack and charged at the blonde. I will beat this Kumo bitch, then I'll beat the worthless wannabe yandame Naruto and reclaim my love, Hinata thought to herself as she started a deadly dance with the Kumo Kunoichi. The two dodged each other nearly perfectly. Samui tried to slash at Hinata's midsection only for the lavender-eyed girl to jump over the attack and kick Samui in the face. The busty blonde went tumbling back from the kick but managed to fix herself before she hit the wall. Lightning Shuriken Jutsu. Samui yelled as she threw several lightning-covered shuriken at Hinata, who smirked. Chitin. Hinata yelled as she started to spin rapidly. The shuriken bounced harmlessly off the dome of chakra. Hinata stopped spinning and smirked at Samui, who kept her emotionless expression. Let's see how you handle this. 8 trigrams vacuum palm. The busty Hyuga said as pushed her palm forward and released a strong shock wave at Samui. As the shock wave neared the blonde preformed a string of hand signs, Raiden Thunder Push. Samui said as she copied Hinata's action but let out a spinning cloud of lightning at Hinata. The two moves clashed and caused a huge explosion. Hinata was forced to avert her eyes because of her Byakugan, giving Samui enough time to get near her, but unlike before, her hands were covered in cloak of lightning. Raiden no Yoroi Raikage Chop. Samui spoke as she delivered a vertical chop. Hinata managed to react in time and got her arms up in a crossguard, but even then she could feel her bones cracking from the pressure of the attack. Seeing that her attack had been blocked, Samui jumped back away from the Hyuga before Hinata had a chance to strike her. Hinata knew that her arms were hurt now from the strong attack but decided to continue to fight. I have to end this, she whispered so that no one could hear her. I will not be able to hit her with 64 or even 32 palms at this rate, so time to test out my new move. Hinata thought to herself. Samui glared at the Hyuga. She blocked my attack. I guess that's kind of cool, but I have to finish this. The busty girl said as she threw a side glance at the Raikage, who was looking down at the battle from where he and the other cages were. Time to end this. Gentle step, twin lion fists. Hinata yelled as a shroud of chakra surrounded both her hands and took on the shape of lion heads. I couldn't agree more, Samui said coldly as she charged up the lightning cloak around her hands. Raiden no Yoroi Lightning Dragon's Claw. Samui stated as more and more lightning covered her hands until they looked like large claws. Both busta ladies glared at each other before the charged. The audience held their breath as the two genin got closer and closer before they finally clashed. The arena shook as a large cloud of smoke rose from the center where the two had clashed. Once the dust had cleared, everyone saw both Samui and Hinata standing in front of each with their fists to each other's jaw. No one made a sound as the two stood there with wide eyes. The seconds ticked away, but to everyone it felt like hours before the two collapsed on top of each other, giving a few perverts, including the Hokage, a small nosebleed when they saw both their massive chests pressing against each other. With the cage's Hiruzen quickly wiped his nose before a saw. Well, that was a good battle. I believe both have shown that they have the power to become Chunin, but I don't think that Hinata is quite ready yet. She was too straightforward and swayed by her anger. Hiruzen spoke to the other cages. A nodded. While I admit that is true, she has a certain fiery to her which I can respect. A said as he kept his thoughts about his adoptive daughter to himself. I agree with you, Hokage Dano. That was a great battle, but I'm sure that the next one between my daughter and a living Namikaze will be even better, with the one between the Uzumaki and Uchiha being the second best of the finals. Orochimaru, disguised as the Kaze cage, said. After both Hinata and Samui had been cleared out of the arena, Genma walked to the middle. Would Naruto, Namikaze and Sabaku no Gaia please come down the fighting area? Naruto smirked as he jumped over the railing and landed with a soft thud. Gaia allowed some of her sand to come out of her gourd and used it to form a platform floated down to the other side across from Naruto. Give me father's blood. This is your chance to make mother very happy. Shikaku said in an insane voice in Gaia's head. Gaia had to resist the urge to hold her head as the Biju within her screamed its orders at her. Instead of fighting them, she just accepted them and looked at Naruto with extreme bloodlust filling her eyes. You Naruto Namikaze will be the one who will prove my existence. Gaia said as more and more sand came out of her gourd and piled around her, getting ready to attack to shield her during battle. Naruto grinned and drew his sword. It seems I'll be able to fully test out that jutsu, Naruto thought to himself as he got into a stance. The proctor started the fight, and like that, Gaia's sand was already on the move. Naruto jumped out of the way of the sand only to have it follow him. Jinto shadowless flight, Naruto whispered as he blurred out of existence. Gaia's sand rose behind her just in time to block a punch from Naruto, but most of the sand was blasted away from the force behind the attack. Naruto grinned as he slashed his sword only to have more sand come up to block it. Well, almost block it, since the sand was parted by the blade and left a light scratch on Gaia's sand armor. Gaia's eyes widened when she saw that her ultimate defense wasn't able to block the sword. Hell, it let the sword go right through it. In the stands, Kankuro's and Tamari's eyes widened when they saw the sword go through the sand like it wasn't even there. Naruto didn't have a chance to continue his assault as the sand turned to attack him. Naruto flipped away from the sand as it crashed into the sand, continued to chance after Naruto, but the blonde Biju was far too fast for it. This is kind of fun, Naruto thought as he charged at the redhead again. The sand swirled around Gaia and turned into a massive sphere-like shield. A sphere of swirling black and white chakra appeared in Naruto's right hand, raise non. Naruto yelled as he smashed his jutsu into the shell. Sand splattered everywhere as the spiraling ball of doom drilled through the sand and hit Gaia in the stomach. Gaia shot across the arena into the wall. Her gourd of sand exploded into a massive cushion to protect her from smashing into the arena wall. Her entire sand armor was cracked from the sheer force of the jutsu. Gaia pushed herself off the wall and glared at Naruto with hatred. Her eyes for a second transformed into that of Shikaku. Give up, Gaia, you can't win. Maybe we can go out for lunch after the exams are over, Naruto asked her in a smooth voice. Gaia blushed at the offer, but her thoughts of maybe accepting it was pushed away by Shikaku. Gaia didn't even respond as her sand rushed at Naruto again, who held out his sword. Her eyes widened when she saw the sand stop dead in its tracks. What the hell, Gaia uttered when she saw her sand stop by itself. Sabakuke's is a special sword I got from a friend a while ago. It is the sword of the desert winds, and it gives me enough control over sand to stop of your attacks, Naruto said before he charged at the Jinchuriki. Gaia was forced to move now that she knew that his sword could bypass her defense and stop her attacks to an extent. Sand drizzle, Gaia said as she sent a large cloud of sand into the air before it started to pour down in small lumps. Naruto smirked as he swung his sword over his head to deflect anything that would have hurt him. He didn't feel like using the Rinnegan yet, so he would stick with his advantage with the Sabakukes until he felt it was the right time to use his secret technique. That's not enough, Gaia-chan. Desert heat, Naruto yelled as he swung his blade, releasing a wave of superheated wind at the Bustu redhead. Gaia's defense rose to block the attack was so hot that it turned some of Gaia's and into perfect glass. This is getting fun, but let's see you block this, Naruto said as he started to stir the air above him. A red sphere appeared over his as red winds spun around it. Gaia brought up her ultimate defense as Naruto leaped high into the air. Shikaku could feel the Biju chakra within the attack and added even more sand and his own chakra into Gaara's barrier. Dragon Twister, Naruto yelled as he swung his sword and threw the attack at Gaia. It was one of his newer attacks which he developed during the month. It was basically like the Raisin Shuriken, only that it was real wind around the sphere of Biju chakra instead of only wind nature chakra. The attack hit Gaia's shield straight on and expanded into a massive dome of red wind with a purplish glow in the middle. The range of the attack was as large as the arena, and the strong winds reached even the cages in their booth. Everyone in the stands had to cover their eyes as wind and sand was thrown all over the arena. What power! A yelled out to Sarutobi. He had been there when Naruto practiced it in one of Kyumo's training grounds. He had instead that Naruto and Genma stay in Kyumo for a few days to rest before going back, and had given them permission to use his training ground. He never expected it to be turned into a wasteland in a singe move from the blonde. He knew that if the blonde had hit him with it at full power, he would not have been able to fight even with his armor. Thank God he didn't use it at full power, thought to himself. This is a new one really. I've never seen him use it before, the Sarutobi yelled back over the howling winds. He practiced it back in Kyumo. This isn't even it at full power. I say this is only at half strength, as to not kill the girl. A responded to the old man. He'll make me proud. A thought about how powerful the boy was and how it would benefit his village, since they were now family through Naruto marrying his adoptive daughters. As the wind cleared, it revealed a panting Gaia. Half her body was the color of sand, cracked to the point where it was breaking apart. The right side of her face, right arm, and left leg weren't like that, but were covered in small cuts. You pathetic girl. Father's not even using his true power yet, he's kicking your ass. Kill him. Kill him. Kill him. Shikaka roared within Gaia's head, forcing her to hold her head. Sand swirled around her and rapidly fixed her armor. Naruto became serious when he saw the insanity filling her glaze. This is my blood. My blood, I'll kill you, she screeched as Shikaka was now completely made her lose her mind, as she sent massive amounts of sand at Naruto, who saw that he had no escape from this attack without endangering the audience, since the sand was surrounding him and was going to crush him from all directions. Naruto smirked as he let the sand wrap around him as his sword started to glow. Sand coffin, Gaia said as she panted. Sand Buri. She was never able to finish her jutsu as the sand coffin exploded in a light that blinded everyone who was looking at it. As the light faded, they saw a new figure standing in the arena that wasn't Naruto, since he was next to the man. This man was a fair-skinned redhead with black rings around his green eyes. On the left side of his forehead was the kanji for love. He wore full-length dark trousers, with a pair of laces on each leg, respectively a few inches below the waist and the knees, a long-sleeved crimson coat with flaring hemlines and slits down on the lower half of the front and the back, a gray holster vest held in place by a single strap over his left shoulder and by two buckled belts which he uses to carry his gourd. He also wore another pair of casually worn belts around his waist. His arms were crossed as he stared into Gaia's eyes. It's been a while, hasn't it, Gaara? Everyone looked on in shock when Naruto talked to the man next to him. To many of the Suna ninja there for the invasion, it looked like Naruto had summoned a male clone of Gaia. Many of the civilians from the other nations yelled that the blonde was cheating by summoning another fighter on his side. That's cheating. A Suna shinobi yelled at Naruto as many started to boo him. Kankuro and Temari were looking on with wide eyes as they saw the male version of Gaara. Narumi and Seouri knew who this was from Naruto's stories, but still couldn't believe the power the man held. It wasn't on par with Naruto, but it was higher than that of the Hokage. He also had the same kind of aura that Naruto had, one that commanded respect. Hiruzen and Danzo were looking down at the arena with curiosity. Naruto had said that he had gotten another cage-leveled ally, but they didn't expect the male version of the Ichibai Jinchuriki. It was truly amazing what Naruto could do. Many of the people from Suna were a bit scared by the man who looked like their feared Jinchuriki but had an even more powerful feel and look than her. The shinobi could tell from a single look that the man was a war veteran who had seen many loved ones die. It only made him that more intimidating. Naruto, it's been a while since we've seen each other face to face, Gaara said while he continued to stare at the redhead in front of the two. The two shinobi ignored the cries from the audience and continued their talk. SP, this is her, huh? She's stronger than I was during the Chunin exams. Gaara said. The blonde beside him smirked. Well, everyone here is 2 years older than in our world, so she has had more time to train than you. Naruto said as he looked up at where the cages were sitting and gave them a small nod. Orochimaru had no idea what that meant, but the 2 other cages knew exactly what it meant. It was almost time. Do you mind taking care of her and giving her the same treatment I gave you? Naruto asked his friend. Gaara looked over at Naruto from the corner of his eyes. Very well. I'll show her what I have learned from the war and in afterlife. Gaara said as he stepped forward towards Gaia, who flinched in a bit of fear. Even Shikaku was a bit intimidated by the Godame Kaze cage. The audience was silent as Gaara calmly walked towards Gaia. Orochimaru was about to call the start of the invasion before both A and Hiruzen jumped out of their seats and kicked the snake out of the stadium and onto one of the larger rooftops of the village. If 2 cages attacking another didn't shock everyone there who wasn't a Konoha Jonin, the massive waves of Konoha Umbu that stormed the stadium with Kumo Shinobi which started to engage the Sand Ninja in combat did. Naruto grinned as he jumped towards where the cages and Orochimaru were. All the Konoha genin and the civilians looked lost at the random fighting that had been started. Kazumi Nichan, what's going on? Narumi asked her sister figure. Suna and Oto are invading. Go help the civilians get to somewhere safe. Kazumi yelled as she knocked out a Suna Chunin and killed an Oto Jonin. Narumi could see that her Sharingan was active already as the silver-haired Kunoichi fought back her enemies. I'm not leaving you. Narumi yelled as she stabbed an Oto Genin. The other Konoha Genin nodded in agreement before they engaged Kankuro and Temari in battle. She was able to see her brother going towards where the cages were about to fight. Where is Narukon going? To help the Hokage, Danzo, and Raikage against Orochimaru. Might Guy responded as he kicked a Suna Jonin away with a leaf whirlwind. Damn it, he better come back in one piece. Seouri yelled over the fighting before then heard a loud buzzing sound. Everyone looked at the village gate to see a massive 7-winged beetle fighting off 2 massive summons that looked like 3-head snakes while Gamabuna fought another one. Is that a Biju? Many of the Suna and Oto ninja cried out at the gates as the Nanabi attacked the summons. There were supposed to be 10 of them, but most of them were destroyed by mysterious Umbu ninjas from Konoha. I thought they only had the Kuwabai, one of the Oto Jonin yelled before he killed by a purple-haired Umbu. With Gaara and Gaia, Gaara continued to stare at Gaia for a few more seconds while the invasion roared around them. Gaia was the one who broke the starring contest with a roar and launched a large claw of sand at Gaara, who raised one hand and stopped the claw before it was able to strike him. Die! Gaia yelled in an almost demented voice. Several tendrils of sand shot at Gaara, who stood calmly as they approached him at high speeds. With a wave of his hand they all turned around and shot back at Gaia. The female Gaara was able to dodge the sand attack but was caught in a sphere of sand made by Gaara. I have to get her out of the village, the male redhead thought as he made the sphere contain the raging Jinchuriki fly away from the village until it was far enough from the village, while he followed shortly behind it on a cloud of sand. Just as they get far enough away from the village, the ball of sand exploded to reveal Gaia in a semi-transformed form. Her right arm and half her face had transformed into that of Shikaku, while a large tail came out of her tailbone. Her gourd seemed to merge into her as her right eye became that of Shikaku. This is where the battle begins, Gaara said as with a flick of his hand sand erupted from his own gourd and flew at Gaia, who swung her arm at him, letting loose a large wave of sand. The 2 waves of sand collided, but Gaara's control over it was high enough that he managed to force it all into a spear, sending it at Gaia. Gaia growled as she extended her arm at the spear, causing it to merge into it. Suna Shuriken! Gaia yelled, sending several condensed shurikens of sand at the older redhead. Gaara made a simple motion with his hands and constructed a wall of sand in front of him. The sand shuriken were easily absorbed into the larger sand body. With another movement, Gaara morphed the wall into a large hand. The hand grabbed Gaia and smashed her against a tree which almost toppled over from the force. Give up, I know every single one of your moves while you only know a fragment of what I can do. Gaara said coldly as he stared at girl. Gaia was trying desperately to escape the sand hand but had made little progress in it. Stupid girl. Let mother handle this, then after we kill this bastard we can kill father. The Shikaku yelled as he pushed more and more of his chakra into Gaia. The red-haired girl screamed as the sand around her started to fuse into her body. Gaia's body now largely resembled Shikaku's with the expedition of the legs which were not covered in sand yet. With another beastly roar, Gaia shot another massive wave of sand at Gaara, who was forced to dodge when he felt he couldn't control her sand anymore. I can't use her own sand against her anymore because of Shikaku, and if I use my own sand then it will only add to her own reserves. I guess it's time to test this out. Gaara thought while dodging several tendrils of sand that the girl was launching at him. Stop moving. Gaia's demented voice echoed through the forest as Gaara weaved through every single attack. Why would I do that? Let me show you what I can do. Gaara said as he saw a massive wave of sand coming at him from Gaia. Platinum sand waterfall flow. Gaara whispered as a seal appeared on each of his hands before a considerable amount of grayish-white sand came out of the seal and collided with the wave of sand that Gaia made. The two attacks cancelled each other out, but as Gaara's white sand went back to him, Gaia's fell lifelessly to the forest floor. This is something I learned from my father in the afterlife. This is my platinum sand, it is denser than sand and even gold. Gaara said as the whitish powder swirled around him. Gaia roared when she was reminded of her father's gold dust. The rage she was feeling allowed the Shikaku within her to take over. Massive amounts of sand erupted from the ground and wrapped around Gaia, transforming her into the Shikaku. Finally. I'm free. Time to party, the Biju roared out in joy of being in control now and able to rampage. Not so fast Shikaku, I will stop you, Gaara said as he sent another wave of sand at the Biju. Shikaku brought up an arm to block the attack only to have the platinum sand wrap around his arm and merge into it. The Biju instantly felt his arm become heavier than before. Damn it! You just like fighting the bitch's annoyance of a father. Die! Shikaku roared as he shot a volley of air bullets at the former Kaze cage. Gaara managed to maneuver through all the attacks before launching his own attack of several spears made of platinum that sank into Shikaku's stomach. You can't win, Shikaku, Gaara said as he held out his hands, causing another surge of platinum to come out of the seals on his hands. Shikaku, knowing from experience, dodged the wave of white dust. Gaara didn't nothing but flick his hand, causing the dust to turn and smash into the Tanuki's side. Shikaku slid a bit as the platinum sand pushed its way into his body. That's it, the Biju roared as its arms separated into 10. Shikaku launched all 10 giant arms at Gaara, who held out his hands and gathered all the platinum dust that wasn't already fused into Shikaku into a massive wall that blocked out the many arms. Is that all you can do, Shikaku? I must say that I'm disappointed by you. To think you once made my life hell, now you're but an ant at my feet. Gaara said as he let out all the dust from the seals in his hands and started to draw even more from the earth. Since the beginning of this battle I've been drawing platinum and turning it to dust, now this battle is over. Giant platinum sand coffin. Gaara yelled as the whitish dust started to gather and wrap around the Biju. Shikaku thrashed as he tried to escape the dense dust that was entering his body. Damn you, human! You're ruining my fun, the giant Tanuki cried out as he was forced to a knee as his body began to get heavier. Gaara didn't respond as he continued to force his dust into the Biju's body. Shikaku's sandy coloring was quickly being replaced by a whitish-gray color. Eventually Shikaku collapsed from how dense he now was thanks to Gaara. The redhead watched as the Biju continued to try to lift himself off the ground, but the Tanuki was only barely managed to lift himself more than a few inches. It's over, Shikaku. You can barely move now, the former Kazekage said calmly while lowering himself down so that he was face to face with the Biju. The Biju's body was completely platinum now. Now it's time for us to talk, Gaara said as he looked right into Shikaku's insane eyes. Ha! Like I would ever talk to you. You're just like that bastard the Yondaime Kazekage, you just want to ruin my fun. Well, I wouldn't stand for it. If I can't have my fun, then I make the bitch do it for me. The insane Tanuki laughed out madly at Gaara, who glared at the Biju. You're really annoying, Gaara said as he held out his hand and clenched his fist. Shikaku screamed in pain as the platinum dust in him started to twist and turn, causing him extreme internal pains. Gaara watched as the beast yelled and cursed from the pain that he was causing. Fuck you, bastard! Shikaku yelled at the war veteran who continued to torture the raccoon. Dog! You will stop your attempts to take over Gaia and will allow her to sleep in peace. Furthermore, you will no longer tempt her to kill people or claim to be her mother. If you continue to do so, I'll have Naruto talk to you himself. Gaara threatened the Tanuki, who was about to argue until he mentioned Naruto. Shikaku's eyes widened when he heard that Gaara would tell Naruto. No. Please don't. Tell father. Anyone but father. Shikaku pleaded. Gaara couldn't help but raise a non-existent eyebrow when he saw the Ichibi's reaction when he mentioned Naruto. It was quite humorous to watch the Biju beg. Like I said, stop your actions against Gaia and return to your cage. Gaara ordered the Ichibi, who grumbled about how unfair life was before he retreated into Gaia. The red-haired girl fell from the air into a soft cushion of white sand made by Gaara. The former Kazekage Resa led away the platinum sand, leaving Gaia lying of the forest ground. Gaara floated down to the clearing where Gaia was. The second Gaia saw Gaara approaching her, she started to crawl away from him. Stay away from me! She yelled as she clawed at the ground but didn't have the energy to carry her body. I will not allow my existence to be erased, she cried out as she desperately tried to get away from the older redhead. I will not hurt you, Gaia-chan, Gaara said calmly as he stopped when he was standing right over her. Gaia's eyes were filled with fear that she was going to die at the hands of the man who looked like a clone of her. We need to talk, Gaara said in a slightly kinder voice as he squatted down next to him. What do you want? Gaia asked as she continued to try to get away from Gaara. Calm down, I just want to talk to you. Why do you kill people? Gaara asked the female Jinchuriki who looked at him. Gaara knew why she killed people. After all, he in a way was her. I need to prove my existence. If I don't kill, then I have no reason to live, Gaia responded. She was staring to feel better around this man for some reason. It felt like she knew who he was even if they had never met. I see, you kill to give yourself a meaning, Gaara said to her with an understanding tone. I used to be the same as you, Gaara said as he squatted in front of her. As a matter of fact, I am you, just like Naruto is also Narumi-san. I used to kill to prove myself, but then I met Naruto, Gaara said as he remembered his battle with Naruto. Gaia blushed when the male redhead mentioned the blonde. Gaara saw this and smirked. Gaia looked at Gaara in confusion. What happened when he defeated you? The female Jinchuriki asked the former Jinchuriki. He taught me how to truly live. He taught me that I can prove my existence by protecting those that are important to me. That true power come when you fight and live for someone else. I used to live for myself after Yashimaru-san tried to kill me and you too. Gaia growled, don't mention that bastard. He and my mother betrayed me, the girl yelled at Gaara, who looked at her with a gentle gaze. It wasn't his fault. It was our father who sent him to do it when we proved we couldn't control Shikaku properly. Yashimaru was father's way of testing us, to see if we could control the Biju. Father forced Yashimaru to lie to us to enrage us. Our Kaya-san always loved us, it is her will that runs our ultimate defense, not the Shikaku. As Gaara said this, Sand swirled around them and collected into the form of Karura. She never hated us. She loved us with all her heart. She never wanted us to become a Jinchuriki. Gaara said as sand swirled around his hands. Kaa-san lives on in our sand. She is the wool that drives the sand to protect you and me. Now rest. Gaara whispered the last part as he pinched the back of her neck, causing her to fall into a slumber. Naruto landed next to Danzo, and Hiruzen. Both were facing Orochimaru, who had gotten rid of his Kaze cage disguise. This is the end of the line, Orochimaru. I already beat you before in the Forest of Death. What makes you think you even have a slimmer of a chance now? Naruto said. The snake Sunin sneered at the blonde Baijuyo. You got lucky last time, brat, but this time I brought some help. Orochimaru said as he slammed his palms on the ground, causing 4 coffins to rise out of the ground. 2 of the coffins said first while the other 2 said second. While this was going on, 4 sound shinobi created a purple barrier blocking the Umbu from coming to the aid of the cage. The lids of the coffins fell open to reveal 2 men and 2 women. Naruto easily recognized the 4 people in front of him. The first male was a tall man with tan skin and waist-length hair. He wore a dark red-colored armor that resembled that of a samurai over a simple black suit. He also wore saddles and a Konoha forehead protector. This man was the legendary master of the Mokuton Hashirama Senju. The woman next to him was Mito Uzumaki, the first Jinchuriki of the Kuwabai no Kitsune. Mito had long, bright red hair and large, pupilless eyes. She wore an elaborate, high-collared kimono with the Uzushiagakuer symbol on the back of the obi, which was tied around her waist. Her hair was arranged in buns with hairpins in them and 3 clips in the front. She also wore a dark shade of red lipstick and had a violet-colored diamond mark on her forehead. She also wore tags with kanji written on them in her hair decals. Next to her was another man. He was the second Hokage and the best water style user that ever lived, Tobirama Senju. Tobirama was a tall, fair-skinned man with white, shaggy hair, red eyes, and 3 red markings on his face, 1 under each of his eyes, and 1 on his chin. He wore armor emblazoned with the Senju symbol worn over a simple black suit, with a distinctive white fur collar. This armor was constructed from numerous blue metal plates, formed into multiple protective guards along his body, in particular, chest, waist, shoulders and upper arms. This clothing was accompanied by sandals and a hapuri engraved with the Konoha emblem, in the place of the more traditional forehead protector. Beneath his shoulder armor he wore 2 bands on each arm. The last woman was someone who Naruto wished he didn't have to fight. It was Narumi's and by default his own mother, Kushina Uzumaki. She had a slender, but feminine build, fair skin, violet eyes, and fiery red hair. She wore a blue forehead protector with her hair tied up in a high ponytail. Her attire consisted of a standard Konoha flak jacket over a black short-sleeved shirt and black form-fitting pants that reached her calves. Where am I? Kushina asked as she looked at the group opposite her. Minato-kun. She yelled out in cheer when she saw Naruto, who had to bite back the urge to yell at her, saying that he was not his father. He however didn't need to correct her as Orochimaru did it for her. I'm afraid you are mistaken, Kushina-san. He is not your husband but a relative of his. Meet Naruto Namikaze. Orochimaru said as he motioned to Naruto, who watched the events with a hidden anger. It seems that my own jutsu is being used against our village, Nii-san. Tobirama said as he gave his Edo Tensei body a once-over. To think that something I created would be used against my own student, the Nidaime said as he looked at Sarutobi and then Danzo. They had been with him on the last mission where he had sacrificed himself for their survival. Hashirama nodded. Yes, it has. Otauto, the wood-style user, said to his brother before turning to his student. It's been a while, Saruchan. You got old, the Shode said with a smirk when he saw the old cage twitch. Now dear, it is not the time to joke around, Mito said before she turned to a shell-shocked Kushina who was staring at the boy in front of her. Kushina-chan, he is not Minato, he is this Naruto. The first Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi told her fellow Uzumaki. I know, but they just look so alike. Seeing him makes me wonder about my daughter. Kushina said as a few tears came out of her darkened eyes. I must say, Orochimaru, you might actually give me a workout. Naruto said as he closed his eyes and crossed his arms. This seemed extremely familiar to Hashirama and Tobirama. But do you think it's enough to defeat me? Naruto said coldly as he opened his eyes to reveal Madara's eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Impossible. Hashirama whispered as he looked at the same Sharingan he fought several decades ago. Nothing is impossible, Hashiramadano. Hokage-sama, I'll take Hashiramadano and Kushina-san out of here to give the three of you more space to fight. You know the plan. Naruto said as Orochimaru placed the seals in the four dead ninjas' head. He could have stopped it at any time, but he really wanted to fight. The Shode, since he was one of the few Naruto knew would be able to challenge him. Without warning, Naruto blurred out of existence and appeared next to Hashirama, with a clone appearing next to Kushina as the four flashed away from the roof, leaving the other three to fight. I'll take Orochimaru, Raikage-dano take on Tobirama-sensei. You might be the only who can match his speed here. Danzo take on Mito-sensei. Hiruzen said before the three charged at the two undead shinobi. A activated his lightning armor and smashed Tobirama in the face with a lightning-enhanced punch, while Danzo drew a sword and slashed at Mito, who summoned her own sword and blocked the attack. Hiruzen continued on and attacked Orochimaru head-on. The Snake Sunin charged at the old Hokage and attempted to drive his Kusanagi through him, only for his sensei to turn to mud the second the sword hit. The snake managed to twist his body out of the way as the Sandaime slammed down on where he was with Inma in his staff form in his hands. You will not win, Orochimaru, the Sarutobi yelled before charging at his student once again. With Naruto and his clone had flashed Hashirama and Kushina to the one of the few places he knew where he could let loose without having to fear that he would hurt people. Naruto smirked as he jumped back away from the two dead shinobi. This is going to be fun. Naruto said as he went through several hand signs, Cat on Fire Annihilation Jutsu. Naruto yelled as he called on Madara's memories. Hashirama and Kushina jumped out of the way of the massive wave of fire. Doing a one-handed hand sign, Hashirama's other hand transformed into several large tendrils that shot at Naruto. The blonde focused his chakra into his eyes. Amaterasu. Naruto whispered as black fires sprung out of where Hashirama was standing. Seeing it coming, Hashirama jumped away before he could get hit by the flames. The Shode was forced to backpedal away as the flames continued chase after him. Kushina, being forced to attack by the seal in her, summoned a katana and charged at the blonde Yondaime look-alike. Seeing the redhead coming at him, broke his concentration over the Amaterasu, causing it to stop in its track. Naruto was forced to dodge a flurry of swings from his mother, but thanks to Madara's Sharingan he was able to easily follow all her attacks. Stand still and let me cut you, the Uzumaki woman said to the blonde, who weaved around every attack. But then I would get hurt, Naruto said with a smirk before he vanished in a blur and appeared behind her with a spiraling sphere of chakra. Raise non, Naruto said as he slammed the ball of chakra into her back. Naruto would have done more, but he was forced to dodge a water dragon from Hashirama. Naruto glared at the wood style user. This is getting fun, Naruto said while his Sharingan spun wildly as he was Hashirama open up a large scroll and summon a large amount of ninja tools. Branches of wood ripped through the ground and grabbed the weapons in midair. Not even giving the blonde Baijuyu a second to think, one of the branches flicked a Fuma's shuriken at him, followed by the other branches throwing their own weapons at him. Madara's Sharingan followed each weapon, allowing the blonde to dodge all the attacks with a bit of help from his Jinten. Before Naruto could attack, his instincts told him to jump. Doing so, Naruto managed to dodge all the weapons which had been thrown at him, the branches of wood that Hashirama had spawned behind him to catch the weapons. The blonde went to perform another jutsu but was interrupted by a chain wrapping around his right leg and throwing him into the valley wall. Kusuna's eyes widened when she felt his chakra. Hashirama-sama. He's a Baijuyo. She yelled at the cage, who nodded and preformed a set of hand signs. Large branches of wood ripped out of the ground and shot towards where the blonde was, only to be cut by a dark blue blade that came out of the dust cloud. Naruto walked out of the dust covered in a blue aura with an ethereal skeleton arm holding a sword. It seems like I might just have to get serious in this fight, Naruto said coldly as the blue shroud grew exponentially along with the skeleton before muscle and skin appeared over it. Susanoo, Naruto said as he made another chakra sword in the ethereal warrior's other hand. With the cages and Danzo. A dodged another water dragon from the Nidaime, who had completely lost control of his body along with Mito. Damn, this guy is annoying. A thought as he charged at the undead shinobi who jumped away from him. Ah, the Raikage yelled as he increased the amount of lightning around him. In what almost looked like a flash from the speed he was moving at, appeared over Tobirama. Lightning. Oppression horizontal chop. Yelled as he delivered a simple yet powerful lightning-covered chop which was able to cut Tobirama straight in half. As the former cage was recovering, pressed the seal that Naruto had given him on the side of the man's arm. All I need to do now is hold him off until Naruto activates the seal. A thought to himself as the buff cage jumped away from the recovering Tobirama. This jutsu is a pain in my ass. Said as he was forced to dodge a barrage of small water spheres from the Nidaime Hokage. The Raikage charged at the Senju and engaged him in combat once again. A little bit away, Danzo was dodging Senbon from Mito. While she wasn't anywhere near the level of Tobirama or Hashirama, she was still a powerful kunoichi on her own. Danzo didn't seem fazed as he dodged the seemingly endless rain of needles. Futon stream, Danzo said silently as he breathed out a strong stream of wind that blew Mito a bit back. The undead kunoichi managed to stick herself to the ground and preformed a set of hand signs. Fuinjutsu flowering explosion, Mito said as seals appeared on the ground around Danzo. Each seal almost resembled a flower. The elder's eyes widened. Before he was engulfed in a massive explosion. Mito was about to go help Orochimaru fight Sandaime but was stopped when a blade of wind cut her left arm off from behind. She looked over her shoulder to see Danzo standing perfectly fine behind her. What caught her attention was his arm. Not only did it look unnatural, but it had 10 Sharinans implanted into it and the image of Hashirama's face on it. That was close. It wouldn't happen again, Danzo said as he threw 2 wind-enhanced shurikens at the Uzumaki only for them to disappear in puffs of smoke. She sealed them, Danzo thought before going for a fire jutsu. Katon Great Fireball Jutsus. Fire sealing method. The redhead said as seals appeared in the air and started to absorb the fire jutsu. Once the entire fireball was sealed, Mito spoke again. Release. That one word caused the seal to release the fireball right back at Danzo, who substituted himself with the tile. Futon vacuum serial waves, Danzo called out as he started to release several blades of wind in different angles by moving his head in different directions. Mito countered with another seal sealing the wind blades. However, this gave the Chimera enough time to throw several kunao with explosive tags attached to them into Mito's stomach. Mito didn't bat an eye as she ripped the tags off and deactivated them thanks to her talent with seals. The Uzumaki crushed the tags before she took out of her own seals, only that these had 5 seals on them. That Shode's wife charged at the old man with the tags in her hands. Danzo was about to move out of the way but was stuck when he saw seals on his feet sealing him to the floor. Mutually multiplying explosive tags, Mito said as she activated the tags, which released 5 tags each before exploding, and the 5 released 5 more each. This started a cycle of explosions as each new tag made 5 more. Before the explosion could end, Danzo appeared outside of the blast with 2 eyes closed on his arm. This is taking too long. I'm too old for this shit, Danzo said as he watched the series of tags explode in front of him. In his hand was the seal Naruto had given him. Further away Hiruzen was dodging swing after swing from Orochimaru, who had regurgitated his Kusanagi. "You will never win, Orochimaru," the old Hokage yelled as he jumped away from the snake Sunin. Orochimaru laughed at his former teacher. "Please, you're an old man now. Maybe if you were a few years younger you may have a chance, but at the moment you're weak," the snake Sunin yelled as several snakes flew from his sleeves at Hiruzen, who raised a stone wall to block the snakes. "You will not leave this place alive," Hiruzen yelled as he pushed the earth wall at the snake, who jumped over it. "Cat on Inferno stream," Hiruzen yelled as he let out a massive stream of flames from his mouth. Orochimaru jumped over the flames and summoned a large white snake in mid-air to attack the monkey summoner. The Sandaime managed to evade the snake and countered by turning the ground under Orochimaru into mud and swung with his large staff, only for the Sunin to turn to mud. "Shit," Hiruzen thought before snakes came out of the floor and attempted to wrap around him. The old man managed to substitute himself with a nearby tile before charging at Orochimaru, who had appeared in front of him with the Kusanagi coming out of his mouth. Hiruzen turned his body in time to dodge the sword and kicked Orochimaru away from him. Orochimaru chuckled as he got back up from the floor. "That was a good hit, sensei. I didn't think that you would be able to dodge that attack in your old age." The snake-like man taunted his former teacher, who glared at his once prized student. "I may be old, but this old man can still kick your ass across this county," Hiruzen said as he threw several shuriken at Orochimaru. With a one-handed sign, the dozen shuriken turned into hundreds. "Doton Earth-style wall," Orochimaru called as he spat out mud from his mouth, which rose into a large wall that blocked all the shurikens. The snake summoner was about to cast another jutsu when he was hit by Inma, who had returned to his normal form. Before Orochimaru could regain his footing, the Sandaime Hokage appeared over him and smashed him into the roof. The village, the Oto and Suna ninja were getting pushed back faster than they ever thought would happen. They never imagined Kumo helping the Leaf, as well as having their Jinchuriki fail to cause any damage and having to fight 3 Bijas at the same time. Most of their forces had been cleared away by the Nanabi, and the appearance of the Hakusabi and the Nibi crushed their hopes of winning the war. "Retreat!" one of the Suna commanders yelled, ordering his men to stop attacking and leave the village. With the call, all the remaining Suna shinobi who had not been killed or captured left the village. The shinobi from Oto looked around, confused by what to do now. They were cornered and left by their allies. "Keep fighting. If Orochimaru-sama finds out that we ran, we will face something worse than death," a sound jonin yelled out to his men, causing them all to attack once again. With Naruto, Hashirama and Kushina were having a hard time evading the attacks from the large ethereal giant around Naruto that was attacking them with 4 different swords. Normally Hashirama wouldn't have a problem doing this, but his power was heavily restrained by Orochimaru so that he would stay in control of Hashirama. Kushina had never had a battle like this. She knew that one wrong step meant she would get cut in half. She had already lost one or more of her arms more than once. "Thank Kami I'm not really alive, or I would be dead right now," she thought to herself. "This is getting old fast," Naruto said as he cut through some of the roots that Hashirama made to wrap around Madara's Susanoo. He had expected to have an epic fight like he hadn't had since Madara, but Hashirama has nowhere near full power because of Orochimaru, and his mother wasn't at the level needed to give him the fight he wanted. "Is this boring?" Kushina yelled as a chain came out of the ground under Naruto and threw him out of the Susanoo. Wood ripped out of the stone ground and wrapped around Naruto before forming a prison that covered every spot, completely concealing Naruto from the 2 undead shinobi. There was an eerie silence in the valley before red and black energy shot out through the thin gaps in the wooden prison. The sound of wood cracking could be heard as a large bulge appeared on the side of prison before another one appeared on the other side, followed by another. "Shit," Hashirama said, making more wood raise from the ground to further wrap around the prison as much as he could under the limitations of power he was under. Seeing that the strange power was no longer leaking, Hashirama let out a sigh of relief. The moment of relief was ruined when the now large prison exploded in a shower of splinters and wisps of red and black energy. Out of the shattered ruins that once was Hashirama's wood prison came out Naruto in a form he had never used before. Naruto's body seemed to be covered in black and red energy. He had a black flame like Seouri with red seals on it, with a red energy shirt with a black seal where his old seal used to be, which resembled circle with a smaller one inside of it with a black line coming out of it up his body to his neck. His pants were also covered in flame-like energy. His skin had become covered in black energy with two horn-like bangs. His eyes were no longer Madara's Sharingan but four rings over a pure red background that covered his entire eyes with three tomos within each of the inter three rings. You should be honored to see this form. You are the first to ever see me enter this form. I guess it's time I properly introduced myself. I am Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, the Nidame Juubi no Kishin and Rokudame Hokage of Konoha. Naruto said as the nine tomo in. His eyes spun wildly as he flexed his power. This was his Ten-Tails human form. It felt almost exactly like Kurama's, only with a lot more power. Both shinobi were shocked speechless at the proclamation but decided not to let their thoughts linger around it. Before the two undead ninjas could react, a black chakra arm shot out of Naruto's back and smashed into the ground between them, launching both away from the other. Naruto calmly walked towards Hashirama when golden chains ripped out of the ground and wrapped around him. Got ya? Since you are a Baijuyo, my chains would work perfectly to hold you down. Kushina said with a wide smirk. While she hated being forced to battle for that snake Orochimaru, she had to admit that this battle was fun. He, if you really think that this will be enough to hold me down, then you're dreaming. Naruto said with a mocking grin as he started to push apart the chains. Ahhhhhh. Naruto yelled before he snapped the chains around him, letting them fade into nothing. Kushina stood there shocked that her chains had failed her. She had used them to suppress the Kyuubi with ease, yet this man was able to rip through them with relative ease. What kind of monster is this man, she thought to herself as she stared at him in awe of the awesome display of raw power. As ashamed as she was, she had to admit that it was turning her on a bit at the moment. See? Your chains can't stop me. I am on a completely different plane of power than the Kyuubi. My might is that of all 9 Baijas fused into one. Now stay back while I have some fun with the Shode. Naruto said as he made the King of Hell appear behind her and devour her entire body before leaving the mortal realm. Naruto quickly jumped back as several roots came out of the ground where he once stood. The Shode stood on a raising tree that was taking to the top of head of the stone rendition of himself. Naruto smirked as he jumped up to the top of the stone Madara head. How ironic. It was. First he had used Madara's eyes to fight Madara's own rival, and now here he was on Madara's head while he fought Hashirama, who was standing on his own head. Nearby Itaki, or Izumi as Naruto knew her, watched the battle from the trees near the valley, watched in awe of the power Naruto was using. The power Naruto held was even greater than what he had used in their battle. Amazing, this battle is like nothing I've ever seen. She thought to herself as she watched the two stare at each other from atop of the two large statues. Are you ready, Hashirama-san? Naruto asked the undead shinobi, who smirked back at him. So it's only Hashirama-san now? Well, let's see if your power is all it's cracked up to be. Hashirama said as he felt the restraints Orochimaru set on him lift as Naruto's aura interfered with the control seal. Red markings spread over his face and around his eyes, with a target-like mark on his forehead like a third eye. Sage mode, Naruto thought to himself. Let us see. Juubi Rasengan. Naruto yelled as he formed a massive Rasengan twice the size of his body before launching his right arm out with it. Senpo Mokitan Great Wood Dragon Jutsu. Hashirama. Making a massive wooden dragon come out of the statue's back and with a great roar go soaring straight at Naruto, the two great jutsus clashed in between the two statues, letting out a gigantic shock wave that shocked the entire country as the two jutsu battled for supremacy before cancelling each other out in a massive explosion that shattered the ground at the bottom of the valley and almost blew away All the trees around the valley. What power! Izumi thought as she used chakra to stick to the tree, hoping it wouldn't get uprooted. As the smoke cleared, both fighters looked at each other in the eyes. Without warning, both leaped out at each other. Within a split second, both Naruto and Hashirama nailed each other in the face, sending the other flying back towards the statue they were standing on. Just before, Naruto corrected himself in midair and formed several small bijudamas in the shape of cones before firing them all at the sage. Seeing this, Hashirama made a single hand sign. More wooded tendrils came out of his statue and intersected the barrage. Explosions rocked the valley as Naruto's attack lit the air in light. Hashirama landed on high head. Sudden water dragon jutsu, the Shode, said as he spat out a large stream of water that morphed in a large dragon. As the water dragon came at Naruto, the Baijuya disappeared in a flash of black, letting the jutsu crash into the Madara. Hashirama sensed Naruto above him and jumped off the stone representation of himself in time to avoid the aftermath of Naruto's Raisin Shuriken. As Hashirama landed on the valley floor, he saw Naruto diving right for him. Before Naruto got within range to hit him, a large pillar of wood came out of the valley wall and smashed Naruto into the other side of the ravine. The Shode didn't get a break, since as soon the pillar hit the wall it exploded as Naruto pulsed his power. The sage quickly reacted when he saw a black chakra arm coming at him holding a large Rasengan. The first one was easy to dodge. But what kept the Sennin on his guard was the fact that 9 other arms with even larger spiraling balls of energy followed the first one. Thanks to his sage mode, he was able to sense the movements of the attacks and dodged all of them, only to be caught off guard when an additional attack came out of the ground. The undead sage managed to create a dome of wood around himself in time to block the attack that tried to grind its way into the down, only to stop a bit short. Naruto glared at the dome and inhaled as much as he could before releasing a volley of large fireball similar to the Phoenix Flower Jutsu, only much bigger. The attack managed to blast through the wooden shell, but before Naruto could react, wooden tendrils came out of the ground and wrapped around him. Naruto wasn't able to get out of the trap before Hashirama smashed a chakra-enhanced punch into Naruto's jaw. The wooden restraints kept Naruto from going flying, which was really a bad thing for Naruto, as Hashirama dished out a combo of ungodly powerful melee attacks on Naruto's body before the blonde got out of the bind and was able to get away from the powerful legend. Now this is a battle, both thought as they stared at the other in the eyes with a mutual respect that only two shinobi on such a level could express. In both their eyes, the only thing that could make this battle better would be if Madara was also revived, but that was not meant to be. Naruto smirked as he cleaned a trail of blood that was coming out of the corner of his mouth. This is a true battle. Two spirits clashing with their will and might. Now, show me everything you have, Hashirama. Naruto exclaimed as he formed another Bijudama and fired at the dead cage. The founder of Konoha used his Gekkei Genkai to lift himself out of the range of the attack. The explosion shook the valley and everything near the valley. They were now attracting a crowd at the valley. Now not only was Izumi watching, but so was Zetsu, most of the Akatsuki in projection form, and several shinobis from different villages who were in the area. Specifically 2 Busta Kunoichi wearing headbands with a flower symbol. Both shinobis circled each other, staring each other down as they prepared their next attacks. Within a split second the two were engaged in a taijutsu fight like no other. Naruto delivered a right hook only for Hashirama to quickly recover and kick Naruto in the ribs. Naruto went flying away but used 2 chakra claws to hold onto the ground and bring himself to his feet. The Baijuya charged at the dead cage and vanished once he came within a few feet of him. Hashirama tensed as he tried to feel out Naruto, only for a massive chakra fist to blast its way out of the ground and launch him into the air. A second hand came out with a cone-shaped Bijudama before firing it at him. Senpo Mokuton Heaven's Forest Barrier. Out of his arm several trees came out and created a sphere-like barrier around him. The trees mended together into a solid wooden ball. The powerful attack smashed right into the shield, causing another great explosion and cracking the entire shield in every way. Hashirama jumped through the gaping hole created by Naruto's attack. The two engaged into another close-range battle, each ended in a stalemate once again. "Show me what you have," Naruto yelled as the sage was he punched him away from him. "As you wish," Hashirama yelled as hundreds of large roots ripped out of the ground under them and attempted to catch and crush Naruto. The Baijuyo started to weave his way around each of the roots and they attempted to subdue him. It was endless. For every one he dodged, 10 more came out to try to crush him. Finally, after what seemed forever, a root managed to wrap around Naruto's ankle and dragged him into a large cluster of roots that coiled around him. Naruto felt his strength slowly being drained from his body by the wood. Naruto, however, continued to struggle to try and escape. "I will not lose," yelled as he used ability to form several arms to rip and tear away all the roots that were trying to suppress him. Hashirama glared at Naruto as he focused even more chakra into his jutsu, increasing the quantity and quality of the roots that attacked Naruto. "You can't win. My Mokuton is able to suppress any Baijuyo," Hashirama yelled out at the godlike shinobi. "Tenpenki-I." With that one word, the onlookers could only describe the scene that happened afterwards as pure chaos. The Valley of the End was now the epicenter of the ultimate natural disaster. From Naruto's location, tornadoes rapidly started to form as bolts of lightning struck all over the valley. From where Naruto was held, massive waves of water ripped through and flooded the valley. The earth shook and was uplifted from the power. Hashirama was hard pressed to stay above the water level and simultaneously avoid both the tornadoes and the couldn't make a platform out of wood because of the random shifts in the earth. "This is unreal. Not even Madara could cause this much devastation in such a short amount of time," the sage thought as he jumped out of the way of a tornado. Eventually the entire disaster retreated into a single spot before it detonated as a massive explosion like the world hadn't seen since the age of the original Rakuto. The explosion took the shape of a giant mushroom cloud with bolts of lightning coming out of the large top of the cloud. Unlike before, Hashirama wasn't able to dodge this attack and engulfed in the aftermath of the explosion. With the Akatsuki. "So this is the power of a true god. I have a long way to go before I will be able to match him in combat." A man with shoulder length and purple eyes with 4 rings around the pupil. He couldn't help but clench his fists as he watched the battle unfold right in front of him. "I claim to be God, but I know that if I ever fought one of these two, I would die," the man thought before looking to his side at the only woman in the group. "But if need be, I will fight him, for our dream," he said in a hushed voice so no one heard him. Back at the battle, the cloud of doom faded slowly. The entire valley was now completely destroyed. The 2 statues that once stood were no rubble on the ground. The water of the waterfall that once stood between the statues was completely evaporated. In the middle of a massive crater stood a panting Naruto. "Shit, I don't have enough control over this form," Naruto thought to himself as he looked around at the valley. In front of him was the ruined remains of a wooden dome. "I did it," Naruto said with a small smile. He knew that he had gained several internal injuries, but for now all he had to do was wait for Danzo to place his seal on Mito, activate the seals, then kill Orochimaru. Silence reigned as Naruto walked away from the dome. His chakra cloak faded away to reveal a heavily bruised and bleeding Naruto. The silence was interrupted by a low rumbling. "No way." Naruto, though, before jumped back to avoid a large wooden spike that erupted from the ground. Naruto turned in time to dodge a punch from Hashirama, who had lost his sage mode and was missing an arm. Normally it would have healed, but because of Naruto's control over yin and yang, the healing effects of the Edo Tensei were negated. Hashirama stood at full height. He only had one arm left and his armor had been completely destroyed along with the top of his clothing, leaving him in only his pants. "It's been a while since I was pushed this far," Hashirama said as he looked at Naruto in the eyes. Hashirama knew he would have died if it wasn't for the effects of his brother's jutsu. "Same. I must admit that I thought I had finished you off with that last one. That damn jutsu is so troublesome. I guess it's about time we end this." Naruto said as his eyes changed back into Madara's Sharingan. Let's Hashirama grinned as he channeled his chakra into his right arm, causing it to bulge with muscle as he regained his sage mode. A dark green aura surrounded Naruto grinned when he felt the chakra being channeled into the arm. Holding out his hand, a sphere of black flames rapidly grew until it was about a foot in diameter. The two godlike shinobi started to run at each other, slowly picking up speed. Senpo Divine Fist of Nirvana. Amaterasu Otamare's Nan. As the two attacks collided, the entire country shook as the ground under them cracked and splintered as the two attacks battled for dominance. The force was so great that it forced the Akatsuki's images to vanish. The two shinobis gritted their teeth as they struggled for supremacy. Hashirama-san, you are by far the strongest person I have faced since my battle with Madara. Naruto said through his teeth. Same, I don't know how you fought Madara, but having his eyes proves that you did. The Shoday responded. The ground under them shattered as the valley became more of a crater from the pressure of the attacks. Everyone watching was forced to leave the area as the valley started to grow even bigger than it once was. I will not lose, I can't lose this battle. Naruto thought to himself as he stared into Hashirama's eyes. No more games. Naruto yelled at. The dead cage before his body erupted in black and red energy. Naruto's Rasengan grew larger as Naruto pumped more chakra into it. Both could feel the chakra of the world swirling around them as it formed a black sphere encompassing both of them. This sensation remained Naruto of the last clash with Sasuke he had at the Valley of the Dead when they were kids. The two near godlike shinobi rapidly saw images from the other's life. Naruto saw Hashirama's childhood during the Wearing Clans period, his rise in power, his battle with Madara before the village was established, the founding of Konoha, Madara's betrayal, and lastly the showdown between the Madara and him. Hashirama went through a slideshow of Naruto's past. He saw how he was raised, his time on Team 7, Sasuke's betrayal which remained him of Madara, he saw him leaving with Jiraiya to train, his return to Konoha, his rescue of the Kaze cage, Naruto's battle with the powerful Pain, Naruto meeting a then later B, Hashirama saw Naruto fighting Kurama, and then lastly he saw images from the war and Naruto facing Madara and the Juubi with his friend Gaara standing by his side in the end. The sage smiled as he felt his body start to break down into pieces. Naruto-kun, you've been through so much. You and that Sasuke kid remind me of myself and Madara a bit. You're someone I would love to have as Hokage. Naruto smiled as his cloak faded away. I was Hokage, but in the end Konoha was still destroyed. Naruto said to the Mokuton user. He still blamed himself for Konoha's destruction. He felt as if he could have saved them from the Juubi if he had only been stronger. Maybe you should forgive yourself. You couldn't have prevented that, but now you're here in a new world, you have found love. As Shoday Hokage, I hereby give you the title of Guardian of Konoha. And with that one last statement Hashirama completely dispersed into dust and returned to the pure world. On the outside of the sphere the world stood still as the ball of chakra exploded in light that shot up into the air in a tower of nature chakra. At the bottom of the valley Naruto laid on his back panting heavily. Most of his clothing was gone from the explosion of power and was covered in his own blood. He had done it. He had beaten Hashirama Senju in a one-on-one fight for the most part. Looking around from his position he saw the wreckage that used to be the Valley of the End. You could still see the faces of Madara and Hashirama within the rubble, but the statues themselves were now a pile of rocks. I can't lay here, I have to get back to Konoha. Naruto said as he slowly stood up only to fall. Before he hit the ground however he was caught by a familiar face. Naruto looked up at the face of Itaki, or as he knew him, or rather her, as Izumi. Rest. You've been through a lot. Izumi said in a stoic yet kind voice as she held Naruto. She still couldn't wrap her head around the battle that she had just witnessed right before her eyes. It would forever be ingrained into her mind as one of the most awe-inspiring yet frightening display of pure power she had ever seen. Not yet, I still have to activate the seals on the other two reanimated shinobi back in Konoha, Naruto said, making a hand sign. Fun, and with that Naruto lost consciousness. Cage battle. Danzo and A panted as they watched the two undead shinobi crumbled into dust as the seals activated. Danzo had managed to plant his seal onto Mito after she had activated her suicidal jutsu. He had managed to sneak it on her back as she was fixing her body. Normally she would have been able to break the seal, but the seal had both the chakra from Naruto and the Shinigami who wanted the souls back in the underworld. The two were dead tired from the battle, with A having several cuts from Tobirama cutting him with his kunao and bruises from the blunt water jutsu. Danzo had lost 6 of his Sharinans from the battle with the Uzumaki. Everything he had sent at her was sealed, then released right back at him, or she would use some suicidal jutsu to try to kill him. Their attention was refocused when they heard both Orochimaru and Hiruzen scream in pain. Orochimaru had been able to stab the Sandaime through the chest with his kusanagi. Hiruzen had managed to sever Orochimaru's arms, but the snake had used his control over the kusanagi to pull it towards the two and skewered both himself and the old man. "This is your end, sensei," Orochimaru said with a wide smirk at his supposed victory. "In case you haven't noticed, you lost both your arms and stabbed yourself," Hiruzen said as he coughed up some blood. This battle had also taken a toll on his body. He, however, was glad he didn't have to fight Orochimaru and the reanimated ninjas by himself. "Even if I die, I'll just come back. Unlike you, I have found ways to remain alive even after my own death," Orochimaru said with a wicked smirk at the mention of his plan to return to the world of the living even after death. "The curse mark," the Sandaime said with disgust filling his voice. Before the two could continue, Danzo and A attack Orochimaru and ripped the sword out of Hiruzen. "Don't worry, Hiruzen, I'll fix you up," Danzo said as he used Izanagi once again, but of the Hokage rather than himself, to remove the stab wound going through the man's chest. "Well, this isn't going as planned. I think I'll take my leave," Orochimaru said as the barrier fell around them. The Umbu around the barrier were intercepted by Oto Shinobi. The Sound 4 jumped down and carried the Sunin away from the cage. Level Shinobi. The three would have attacked if they didn't have to deal with the cannon fodder that was an entire squad of Otochinin and Jonin. By the time they had finished everyone off, Orochimaru was long gone and they were too tired to search. All parties involved in the battle were tired. There were captured soldiers that had to be put in cells to be interrogated, buildings that were damaged to plain out destroyed, and several dead shinobi and kunoichi that needed to be cremated then buried. 3 days later, Naruto stood at the side of Hiruzen's bed in the hospital. The blonde was covered in bandaged but was able to move around thanks to his healing ability that came with being the Juubi and a near god. Danzo had left to return to his base to reorganize route after the battle. A had been in his own room being guarded by Kumo shinobi. "So how are you doing, Sandaime Dano?" Naruto asked with a smirk. Hiruzen couldn't help but chuckle at the blonde's attitude. "I'm fine, Naruto-san," he responded. Normally he would have called him Rokudaime Dano, but he had Umbu watching him from attackers. The old man's smile slowly sagged into a frown, "But from this battle I've realized that in my old age I'm no longer fit to lead this village." "That's not true, you managed to hold your own against Orochimaru and forced him to a standstill. You can still protect this village." Naruto tried to encourage the old man. He had to be at his funeral once and almost did again. It only reinforced Naruto's theory that he had grown overconfident and was putting his family and friends in jeopardy. He had already allowed Seouri to gain the curse mark and failed to seal it when it was still fresh. Now he had almost lost his grandfather figure for the second time. "I wish that was true, but even if I could match Orochimaru I would never be able to up against the likes of people like Nagato or Madara. You even faced Hashirama and beat him," the Sandaime said with a sad smile. He had always dreamed of fighting his sensei and beating, so, That's it for today. I hope you guys like it and enjoyed the story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe my channel for great stories like this. Thank you, see you soon in next video.